The boardroom went silent when Alara Vaughn's father slid the ultimatum across the mahogany table. Marry within 3 months, or lose her CEO position forever. She had built empires, crushed competitors, commanded billions, but she couldn't command love. Desperate and cornered, the most powerful woman in Manhattan would make the most reckless decision of her life in a carpenter's workshop in nowhere America, offering a complete stranger a deal that would shatter both their worlds. This is the story of how a fake marriage became devastatingly real. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Vaughn Industries' executive boardroom like an angry witness to Alara's unraveling life. She stood perfectly still in her tailored Armani suit, fingers pressed against the cold glass, watching the lights of Manhattan blur into watercolor streaks 40 stories below. Behind her, 8 board members sat in deliberate silence, waiting. Her father broke it first. "You have 90 days, Alara." She didn't turn around. "I heard you the first time." "Then perhaps you'll also hear this. The Castellano merger requires family stability, their values, their image." Richard Vaughn's voice carried the weight of old money and older expectations. Antonio Castellano won't sign over a $3 billion portfolio to someone he sees as unstable. Unstable. Alara turned slowly, her expression carved from ice. "I've increased company profits by 42% in 2 years. I've navigated 3 hostile takeovers. I've expanded into 6 international markets, but I'm unstable because I'm not married? You're 32 years old and alone." Her father's words landed like stones. Castellano is traditional. He wants to know his business partner has roots, commitments, a family. "This is archaic." Alara's voice remained steady, but her knuckles whitened against her leather portfolio. "It's discrimination. It's reality." Richard stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced precision. "The vote was unanimous. You have 3 months to present a suitable marriage, or the board will vote you out and install Marcus Grayson as CEO. The name hit her like a physical blow. Marcus Grayson, her former mentor turned rival, the man who'd tried to undermine her at every turn, who'd spread rumors about her personal life to weaken her professional standing. "You can't be serious. The merger happens with or without you, Alara, but it will be easier for everyone if you simply comply." Her father moved toward the door, then paused. "Your mother and I married for practical reasons. We built something successful. Love is a luxury. Leadership is a necessity. Choose which one you want to be remembered for." The door clicked shut behind him, followed by the shuffle of board members filing out. Only Margaret Chen, the CFO and Alara's closest ally on the board, remained. "There has to be another way," Alara whispered. Margaret's expression was sympathetic but firm. "I fought them, Alara. For 2 hours before you arrived. The votes are locked." Castellano made his position clear. He won't proceed without assurances of your stability. And to him, stability means marriage. "So I'm supposed to, download a dating app, propose to the next man I meet at a charity gala?" "I'm sorry." Margaret gathered her papers. "But if you want to keep what you've built, you need to make this happen. 90 days isn't long." When Margaret left, Alara finally allowed herself to sink into the leather chair at the head of the table. The city glittered below her, thousands of lights representing thousands of lives, each one somehow simpler than hers. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through contacts, colleagues, business associates, industry connections. Not a single person she could imagine marrying, even in pretense. Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Miss Vaughn, your car is waiting." "Cancel it. I'm driving myself tonight." "But ma'am, you haven't driven yourself in—" "Tonight, James. That's all." She left the building through the parking garage, sliding behind the wheel of her silver Aston Martin, a car she'd bought 2 years ago and driven exactly 3 times. The leather still smelled new. The engine roared to life with a satisfying purr, and for the first time in hours, Alara felt a spark of control return. She drove without destination, letting the GPS fall silent, following instinct instead of algorithms. The city gave way to suburbs to rural highways, rain to clear skies. By the time she noticed the fuel light blinking, she was somewhere in upstate New York, surrounded by farmland and forest, the Manhattan skyline a distant memory. The gas station was closed. So was the next one. Her phone showed 1 bar of service and 18% battery. Alara laughed, actually laughed, at the absurdity. Billions in assets, and she couldn't find basic fuel. The road curved ahead, revealing a small town that looked like it had been transplanted from a different century. Hand-painted signs advertised fresh produce and hardware. A diner's neon light flickered open in optimistic red. And there, on the corner of Main and Oak, stood a workshop with its lights still burning despite the late hour. Reed carpentry and custom furniture. Alara pulled into this gravel lot, her expensive car looking ridiculous next to the weathered pickup truck parked by the entrance. Through the open bay door, she could see a man working at a massive table saw, his movements precise and unhurried. Wood shavings drifted through the air like snow. She stepped out, her heels crunching on gravel. The saw went silent. The man looked up, and Alara found herself staring at someone completely outside her catalog of human experience. He was probably her age, maybe slightly older, wearing a faded flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, sawdust caught in dark hair that needed cutting. His hands were scarred with the evidence of real work, not sanitized gym routines and manicured meetings. "Help you?" His voice was quiet, careful. "I need gas. Everything's closed." He wiped his hands on a rag, studying her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Nearest open station is about 20 miles north." "My car won't make it." "Then I guess you're staying in Millbrook tonight." He nodded toward the town. "Diner rents rooms upstairs. Tell Ruth that Caleb sent you. She'll set you up." "Caleb." Alara tested the name. "Thank you." She should have left then. Should have walked to the diner, rented a room, called for her car service in the morning. But something made her pause in the doorway, watching him return to his work. The way he moved, steady, purposeful, present in a way she'd forgotten humans could be. "What are you building?" He glanced up, surprised she was still there. "Dining table. Custom order for a family in town." "It's beautiful." "It's not finished." But there was the smallest hint of pleasure in his voice, the pride of a craftsman who rarely received compliments. Alara stepped further into the workshop, her designer heels absurd against sawdust and wood chips. The space smelled like cedar and varnish, tools hanging in organized precision on pegboards, half-finished projects in various states of completion. This was a place of creation, not destruction, building, not breaking, everything her world wasn't. "Do you ever work on contract?" The question escaped before she'd fully formed it. Caleb set down his measuring tape. "Depends on the contract. What if someone needed something built fast? Something that looked real but was temporary?" His expression shifted, wariness replacing curiosity. "Lady, I don't know what you're asking, but I build furniture that lasts. If you want cheap and temporary, there's an IKEA about an hour south." "No, Alara stopped, recognizing the ridiculousness of what she'd almost said. She'd been about to propose a business arrangement to a complete stranger in a carpentry workshop because her desperate mind had latched onto the first solution it could find. Someone so far removed from her world that the connection would be untraceable. Someone who could play a role without complications. Someone who clearly wanted nothing to do with her. "I apologize. It's been a long day. I'll take your advice about the diner." She turned to leave. "Wait." She stopped. Caleb moved closer and she caught the scent of wood and soap, something honest and unmanufactured. "You're running from something." It wasn't a question. "What makes you say that?" "Because I know what running looks like. Expensive car, expensive clothes, showing up in the middle of nowhere asking strange questions." His eyes, gray, she noticed, like steel, studied her with uncomfortable perception. "Whatever you're running from, you won't find the answer here." Maybe I'm not looking for answers. Maybe I'm just looking for something different." "Different from what?" "From a life where everything is a transaction, where people are assets to be managed and relationships are contracts to be negotiated." The words tumbled out, surprising her with their honesty. "Where love is considered a luxury and marriage is just another business strategy." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. "That sounds like a lonely way to live." "It's the only way I know." Something shifted in his expression. Not pity, which she would have hated, but understanding. "The diner's that way. Tell Ruth I sent you. She'll take care of you." This time when Alara left, he didn't stop her. The room above the diner was small but clean, with handmade quilts and furniture that had probably come from Caleb's workshop. Ruth, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and no-nonsense efficiency, had asked exactly 0 questions about why a woman in a $3,000 suit needed emergency lodging. Alara lay awake on the unfamiliar bed, her phone charging on the nightstand, messages piling up from her assistant, her father, board members. She ignored them all. Instead, she stared at the ceiling and thought about the carpenter who'd looked at her and seen someone running. Because he was right. She'd been running for years. From expectations, from loneliness, from the suffocating reality that she'd built an empire but forgotten to build a life. And now she had 90 days to fabricate the one thing money couldn't buy. Her phone buzzed. A message from Margaret. Castellano's people called. They want to meet your fiancé before finalizing. This is really happening, E. You need a plan. Alara closed her eyes, and the image that appeared wasn't of any man from her world. It was of a carpenter with sawdust in his hair and calluses on his hands, building something meant to last. Crazy. The idea was absolutely crazy. But crazy was exactly what her situation required. Morning came too early, sunlight streaming through thin curtains. Alara dressed in the same clothes from yesterday, she'd have to arrange for her assistant to send things, and made her way downstairs. The diner smelled like coffee and frying bacon, locals filling booths and counter stools, conversations flowing easy and familiar. She felt like an alien. Ruth appeared with coffee before Alara could ask. Sleep okay, honey? Yes, thank you. What do I owe you? 40 for the room. Breakfast is on the house. Anyone Caleb sends my way is welcome here. You know him well? Ruth's smile carried a weight of history. Known Caleb Reed since he was born. Good man. Been through more than his share of heartbreak. Alara's curiosity sharpened. Heartbreak? Lost his wife 3 years ago. Cancer. Left him with a little girl to raise alone. Ruth refilled a customer's coffee, voice casual, but eyes watching Alara carefully. He doesn't talk much about it. Just works. Takes care of his daughter. Keeps to himself. The information settled in Alara's chest like a stone. A widower. A single father. Someone who understood loss and responsibility and sacrifice. Someone who might understand desperate measures. Where would I find him this morning? Ruth's eyes narrowed slightly. Workshop opens at 8, but Caleb's not looking for complications, if you understand my meaning. I'm not here to complicate anything. I just need to ask him a question. Sure. Ruth didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue. Mind yourself, honey. That man's been through enough. Alara paid for the room, left a generous tip, and walked the 3 blocks to Reed Carpentry. The morning was crisp, the town coming alive with a slowness that felt almost meditative. People nodded greetings as they passed. Someone was washing the windows of the hardware store. A dog slept in a patch of sunlight outside the post office. This was the world her money had built walls against. The workshop door stood open. Inside, Caleb was already working, this time sanding the table she'd seen last night. He looked up when her shadow fell across the doorway, surprise flickering across his features. Didn't expect to see you again. I need to ask you something. Alara stepped inside, heart hammering with the recklessness of what she was about to propose. And I need you to hear me out completely before you respond. Caleb set down his sanding block, wariness returning. I'm listening. I need a husband, temporarily, for 1 year. The words came out clinical, businesslike, her boardroom voice. It would be a contract arrangement. You would need to attend occasional public events with me, present as my spouse to specific business associates, and maintain the appearance of a legitimate marriage. In exchange, I would provide substantial financial compensation. The silence that followed was devastating. Caleb stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Then, slowly, he started to laugh. Not with humor, but with the kind of disbelief that borders on anger. You're serious? Completely. Lady, I don't know what kind of world you live in, but in mine, marriage isn't a business transaction. In my world, everything is a business transaction. And right now I need this one to save my career. Then find someone from your world to play pretend with. He turned back to his work, dismissing her. Alara didn't move. I can't. Anyone from my world would use it as leverage. Or worse, Actually expect the marriage to be real. I need someone with no connections to my industry, no interest in my money beyond the agreed compensation, and no reason to complicate things with emotional expectations. You need a prostitute, not a carpenter. The word stung, but she didn't flinch. I need someone who understands contracts, someone who can be professional, someone who... She stopped, regrouping. Ruth told me you have a daughter. That got his attention. He spun around, and the look in his eyes could have frozen fire. Don't you dare bring my daughter into whatever this is. I'm not trying to exploit her. I'm trying to understand you. Alara kept her voice level despite the ice in his glare. You're a single father. You work hard. You probably worry about money, about giving her everything she needs, about... Get out. How much would it take? She pressed forward, sensing she was losing him but unable to stop. Name a number, whatever you need, college fund, medical bills, house repairs, expanding your business. I can provide it. 1 year of your time for financial security. That's the offer. Caleb crossed the space between them in 3 strides, and for a moment Alara thought he might physically throw her out. Instead, he stopped inches away, voice low and dangerous. My daughter's name is Mia. She's 5 years old. She likes butterflies and pancakes and stories about dragons. She asks me every night when her mom is coming back, and I have to tell her never. Every single night. His jaw clenched. So when you stand here and try to buy me like I'm another one of your transactions, understand that the answer is no. Not for any amount of money. Now get out of my workshop before I forget to be polite. Alara stood frozen, shame flooding through her for the first time in years. She'd miscalculated completely, reduced a grieving father to a business opportunity, treated his pain like a negotiating point. I'm sorry, she whispered. You're right. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. She turned to leave, dignity in tatters, when a small voice called from the back of the workshop. Daddy? Both of them turned. I saw a little girl stood in the doorway that led to what must be living quarters, clutching a stuffed rabbit, dark hair tangled from sleep, eyes wide and curious. Hey, butterfly! Caleb's entire demeanor transformed, voice going soft as he crossed to kneel before her. What are you doing up? It's early. I heard talking. Mia's gaze slid to Alara, unafraid. Who's the pretty lady? Nobody, sweetheart. She was just leaving. But Mia had already slipped past her father, padding across the workshop in bare feet and Princess Jasmine pajamas. She stopped in front of Alara, tilting her head with the unself-conscious assessment of children. You look sad. The observation hit Alara harder than any of Caleb's anger. I suppose I am, a little. Daddy gets sad sometimes, too. But then we make pancakes and it gets better. Mia held up her rabbit. This is Mr. Hoppy. He's very brave. He looks very brave. Alara crouched down to Mia's level, something unfamiliar tugging in her chest. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Hoppy. And you. I'm Mia. I'm 5 3/4. Are you a princess? Despite everything, Alara smiled. No, sweetie. I'm just a businesswoman. What's that? Mia, let's get you some breakfast. Caleb's voice held a warning, but his daughter was already crawling into a chair by the workbench, clearly settling in for conversation. I want to hear about business. Mia swung her legs, Mr. Hoppy dangling from one hand. Is it like being a queen? Sometimes it feels that way, but queens in stories have much prettier dresses. I like your dress. It's shiny. Alara glanced down at her Armani suit, rumpled from being slept in. Thank you. Mia. Caleb tried again, but his daughter had moved on, launching into a detailed explanation of her favorite breakfast foods, her upcoming birthday party, and whether Alara had ever seen a real butterfly garden. And Alara, who hadn't had a genuine conversation with a child in her entire adult life, found herself answering every question, watching Mia's face light up with each response. The little girl was magnetic, all enthusiasm and innocence, her joy unguarded in a way Alara had forgotten was possible. Then Mia coughed. It started small, just a tickle, but it grew, racking her small body with violent force. Caleb was there instantly, rubbing her back, murmuring reassurance, his face draining of color. It's okay, butterfly, you're okay. Just breathe. When the coughing subsided, Mia leaned against her father, exhausted. Alara noticed for the first time how pale she was, how dark the circles under her eyes. how her breathing sounded labored even after the fit passed. "Sorry," Mia whispered. "Nothing to be sorry for, baby." Caleb lifted her gently. "Let's get your medicine." He carried her to the back room, leaving Alara standing in the workshop, her heart hammering with a recognition she didn't want to name. She knew that look on a parent's face, had seen it in hospital waiting rooms during charity visits, in the eyes of board members discussing family leave policies, in her own mother's expression once, years ago, when Alara's younger brother had fallen ill. It was the look of someone fighting a battle they couldn't control. 10 minutes passed before Caleb returned. He looked exhausted, decades older than when she'd first walked in. "She's resting." He didn't meet Alara's eyes. "You should go." "What's wrong with her?" "None of your business." "Caleb," Alara gentled her voice. "Please." Maybe it was the way she said his name. Maybe he was just too tired to keep fighting. Whatever the reason, his shoulders sagged and the words came out flat and broken. "Congenital heart defect. She needs surgery, valve replacement, and repair. Without it, she'll—" He stopped, unable to finish. "And the surgery?" "Scheduled for 6 months from now. That's the earliest we could get with our insurance approval and the specialist's availability. But she's getting worse. The doctors say she needs it sooner, but moving up the surgery means going to a different hospital, different surgeon, and our insurance won't cover it. The out-of-pocket cost is—" He laughed bitterly. "Let's just say I'd need to sell this place 10 times over." Alara's mind was already calculating. "How much?" "It doesn't matter. I can't afford it." "How much, Caleb?" $250,000. Plus recovery costs, medications, follow-up procedures. We're looking at close to $300,000 total. He finally looked at her, eyes red-rimmed. "So unless your business proposal comes with that kind of cash, I'm not interested in whatever you're selling." The universe, Alara thought, had a cruel sense of timing. What if it did? Caleb froze. What? What if my proposal included exactly that amount? Full funding for Mia's surgery, immediate transfer to the best cardiac surgeon in the country, all medical expenses covered, plus a separate payment to you for the arrangement itself. She watched him process it. The hope fighting with suspicion, desperation warring with pride. "You're serious." "I'm always serious about contracts. 1 year. You pose as my husband for business purposes. I fund Mia's surgery and all related expenses, plus pay you $500,000 for your time and inconvenience. At the end of the year, we dissolve the arrangement quietly, and you go back to your life with your daughter healthy and your financial future secure." "Why me?" The question came out raw. "You could find anyone. Why a stranger from a town you've never heard of?" "Because you have no connection to my world. Because you'll disappear after this is over. Because you're desperate enough to consider it and honest enough to honor the agreement." She paused. "And because you're the first person in years who's looked at me and seen someone running instead of someone who has it all together." Caleb turned away, hands gripping the edge of his workbench. "This is insane." "Yes. You're asking me to lie to everyone I know, to fake a marriage, to uproot my daughter's life. I'm asking you to save her life. Everything else is just details." The silence stretched so long that Alara thought she'd lost him. Then, quietly, "I need to think about it. You have 24 hours. After that, I'll find another solution." She pulled out her phone, typing quickly. "I'm sending you my contact information. When you decide, call me. Day or night." She made it to the door before he spoke again. "If I say yes, and I'm not saying I am, but if I did, what would this marriage actually look like?" Alara turned back. "Professional, clean. You'd need to attend some events, meet some people, play the role convincingly in public. In private, we'd maintain separate lives as much as possible. No expectations beyond the contract terms. And after the year? Quiet divorce. Generous settlement. You and Mia go back to your life here. I go back to mine in Manhattan. It'll be like we never met. Except my daughter will be alive. Except that." Caleb's laugh was hollow. "You make it sound so simple." "Isn't it? You need money for surgery. I need a husband for appearances. We help each other and walk away. It's the cleanest transaction I can offer." Marriage isn't supposed to be a transaction. But it can be. People have done it for centuries. Arranged marriages, political alliances, social contracts. This isn't that different. It's completely different. Those marriages at least pretended to honor something. This is just empty. Alara felt the truth of that like a slap, but she kept her expression neutral. Empty keeps things simple. Emotions complicate everything. Is that what you really believe? She thought of her father's words. Love is a luxury. Leadership is a necessity. It's what I know works. Then I feel sorry for you. The pity in his voice cut deeper than any insult could have. Alara straightened her shoulders, armor sliding back into place. 24 hours, Caleb. Think about Mia. Think about giving her a future. The rest is just pride, and pride won't save her life. She left before he could respond, walking out into the morning sunshine with her heart pounding and her hands shaking. She'd just propositioned a grieving widower, used his dying child as leverage, and reduced sacred vows to a business contract. And the worst part was, she'd do it again in a heartbeat if it meant securing what she needed. Because that's who she was. That's who her world had made her. Someone who treated everything, even love, even family, as just another deal to be negotiated. She just hoped Caleb Reed was desperate enough to accept. The call came at 2 a.m. Alara was awake anyway, sitting in the window seat of her hotel room overlooking the darkened main street of Millbrook, watching the occasional car pass through the single traffic light. Her laptop glowed with emails she couldn't focus on, contract drafts that suddenly seemed meaningless compared to the gamble she'd just made. When her phone buzzed, she didn't recognize the number, but she knew who it was before answering. I need guarantees. Caleb's voice was rough, like he hadn't slept either. Everything in writing, the surgery costs, the payments, the timeline, all of it legal and binding. Alara's heart kicked against her ribs. You'll do it. I'm considering it, but I have conditions. Name them. First, Mia's surgery happens within 2 weeks. No delays, no waiting. You get her into the best cardiac program in the country immediately, or there's no deal. Done. I'll have her scheduled by end of business tomorrow. Second, she never knows this is fake. As far as my daughter is concerned, we're really married. I won't have her confused or hurt when this ends. Alara hadn't considered that complication, but she recognized the protective fury beneath his words. Agreed. We'll tell her age-appropriate truths and handle the transition carefully when the time comes. Third, I'm not moving to New York permanently. Mia has school here, friends, stability. Whatever this arrangement requires, her life stays as normal as possible. We can work around that. You'll need to be in Manhattan for key events, but we can maintain your home base here. Silence stretched between them, filled with everything unsaid. Then Caleb spoke again, quieter now. Why are you really doing this? And don't give me the business answer. I want the truth. Alara stared out at the sleeping town, searching for honesty in a life built on careful presentations. But Simone, because I spent my entire existence building something I thought mattered, and now I'm being told it's worthless unless I can prove I'm capable of the one thing I've never been able to do, make someone love me enough to stay. This isn't love. I know, but it'll look close enough to save everything I've worked for. And maybe that's all love is in my world anyway. A convincing performance. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. It's the truest thing I've said in years. She pulled her knees up to her chest, suddenly exhausted. So do we have a deal, Caleb? Will you let me buy a year of your life to save both our futures? The pause felt eternal. Then, I'll meet you at the diner at 8. Bring the contracts. If everything checks out, we'll sign. He hung up before she could respond. Alara immediately called her lawyer, waking him without apology. Daniel, I need a contract drafted by 7 a.m., full confidentiality, prenuptial agreement, medical funding guarantee, and a dissolution clause with specific timeline and financial terms. I'm emailing you the details now. Alara, it's 2 a.m. Bill me triple. I need this perfect. By 6 a.m., she had a 30-page contract printed and bound, every clause designed to protect both parties while maintaining absolute discretion. By 7, she'd arranged for Mia's transfer to Columbia Presbyterian's Pediatric Cardiac Unit and secured an appointment with Dr. Sarah Chen, the country's leading specialist in congenital heart defects. By 7:30, she'd showered, dressed in a fresh suit her assistant had overnighted, and walked to the diner with her entire future riding on a carpenter's signature. Caleb was already there, sitting in the last booth, looking like he'd aged a decade overnight. A cup of coffee sat untouched in front of him. Alara slid into the opposite seat. "Morning. Is it?" He glanced at the contracts she placed on the table. "That's a lot of paper for a simple arrangement." "There's nothing simple about what we're doing. These contracts protect both of us, legally, financially, and personally. Everything we discussed is in there, plus provisions we didn't cover." "Such as?" "Confidentiality clauses, ensuring neither of us can discuss the arrangement publicly. Financial penalties if either party breaches the agreement. Custody considerations for Mia if something happens to you during the contract period. Healthcare directives, property division, exit strategies." Caleb picked up the first document, scanning pages with obvious discomfort. "You've thought of everything." "That's what I do. I anticipate complications before they arise." "You make this sound like a corporate merger." "In many ways, it is. Two parties with mutual needs forming a temporary alliance for strategic benefit." She watched him flip through medical guarantees, noting how his jaw tightened when he saw the dollar amounts. "I've already arranged Mia's transfer to Columbia Presbyterian. Dr. Chen can see her Thursday for preliminary evaluation, with surgery scheduled for the following week if she's stable enough." His head snapped up. "That fast?" "I told you, immediate transfer, no delays. Dr. Chen is the best. She's performed over 500 pediatric cardiac surgeries with a 98% success rate. Mia will have the finest care available." "Why would a doctor like that agree to see us so quickly?" Alara hesitated, then decided honesty was necessary. "Because I made a substantial donation to the hospital's research program and called in favors from 3 board members. In my world, access comes with leverage." "Your world sounds exhausting." "It is, but it's effective." She pulled out a pen. "If you're satisfied with the terms, we can sign now. I'll have everything filed and executed by close of business today. We can be married by tomorrow if you want to expedite things." Caleb set down the contract, looking at her with something between pity and confusion. "You really don't see how insane this is, do you?" "I see a solution to 2 impossible problems." "What's insane about that?" "Everything. Normal people don't negotiate marriage like a business deal. They don't trade vows for medical bills. They don't—" He stopped, running a hand through his hair. "I'm going to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. Have you ever been in love? Real love, not the transactional kind you keep describing?" The question landed like a punch. Alara's first instinct was to deflect, but something about the rawness in his expression demanded truth. "Once. In college. He was a literature major, completely impractical, wanted to write novels instead of making money. My father hated him." "What happened?" "I chose my MBA over him. Picked Wharton instead of staying local for a relationship that probably wouldn't have lasted anyway. He called me heartless, said I'd always choose ambition over people." She met Caleb's eyes. "He was right. And you're okay with that?" "I learned to be. Love is temporary, success is measurable. I built something permanent instead of chasing something fleeting." Caleb shook his head slowly. "My wife Emily used to say the most important things in life are the ones you can't measure. Love, joy, connection. She'd think this whole arrangement was tragic." "But she's not here." Alara kept her voice gentle. "And Mia needs surgery. The tragic part would be letting pride prevent you from saving her." The blow landed as intended. Caleb flinched, then reached for the pen with a hand that trembled slightly. "If I sign this, we do it my way in at least one respect. We tell people we met, fell for each other fast, and decided life's too short to wait. No one in this town can know this is fake." "Agreed." "And when we're around Mia, we act like real partners, respectful, cooperative. Maybe not in love, but at least like we actually like each other." "I can do that. Can you? Because so far you've treated this entire thing like a hostile takeover, not a relationship. Even a fake one requires some warmth." The criticism stung because it was accurate. Alara had approached this negotiation the same way she approached boardroom battles, with cold efficiency and strategic detachment. But Caleb was right. If they wanted this to work, especially around his daughter, she'd need to access whatever rusty emotional skills she still possessed. "I'll try," she said quietly. "I'm not good at warmth, but I'll try." Something shifted in his expression, not quite trust, but maybe the beginning of understanding. He signed the first document, then the second, working through the stack with methodical care, reading every clause while Ilara waited in uncharacteristic silence. When he reached the final page, he paused. This clause says the marriage ends in exactly 1 year unless both parties agree to extension. Why would we extend? It's standard language, allows for unforeseen circumstances requiring continued arrangement. You mean if your business situation doesn't resolve in 12 months? That, or if you need additional financial support for Mia's ongoing care. It's an option, not an obligation. Caleb signed his name one last time, the ink looking like surrender. There, it's done. I just sold myself to save my daughter. You made a strategic choice to secure her future. There's no shame in that. Tell me that in a year when I'm explaining to her why the marriage is ending. He pushed the contracts across the table. When do we tell people? Today. I'll release a statement through my PR team this afternoon announcing our engagement. We'll marry at the courthouse tomorrow, small ceremony, just witnesses. Then we'll have a larger reception later to satisfy social expectations. That's it? No actual wedding? Weddings are theater. We need legal documentation, not spectacle. Emily and I got married in her parents' backyard. Her father officiated. We had 50 people, homemade food, and dancing until midnight. His voice carried the weight of ghosts. It was perfect. Ilara felt the comparison like a rebuke. This isn't that kind of marriage. No, it's really not. He stood, leaving the contracts on the table. I need to go tell Mia we're moving to New York temporarily and that she's getting surgery. Any advice on how to explain that to a 5-year-old? Tell her the truth, that you met someone who wants to help, and sometimes help comes from unexpected places. And the marriage part? Tell her you met someone who makes you want to try again. Children understand hope better than adults do. Caleb studied her for a long moment. You know, for someone who claims not to understand emotions, you occasionally say something surprisingly insightful. I understand emotions. I just don't trust them. That might be the same thing. He grabbed his jacket. I'll bring Mia to meet you this afternoon. If we're doing this, she should know who she's supposed to call her stepmother in a few weeks. The word stepmother sent an unexpected jolt through Ilara's chest. She'd never considered children in her life plan, had actively avoided that complication. Now she was about to become legally responsible for a 5-year-old with a life-threatening condition. Caleb, wait. He turned back. I need you to understand something. I will honor every clause in that contract. I will fund the surgery, support Mia's care, play whatever role is necessary. But I'm not maternal. I don't know how to be around children. If this is going to work, you'll need to take the lead with her. You were doing fine yesterday when she was asking you about business and butterflies. That was different. That was conversation, not parenting. Being a parent is mostly just showing up and paying attention. You can handle that. He paused at the door. See you at 3. Bring that warmth you promised to work on. After he left, Ilara sat alone in the booth, contracts stacked in front of her like evidence of something she couldn't quite name. Ruth appeared with fresh coffee, eyeing the paperwork with obvious curiosity. Whatever you're planning, honey, I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, Ruth. So do I. The afternoon brought complications Ilara hadn't anticipated. Her father called within an hour of the PR announcement, voice tight with controlled fury. Ilara, what the hell is this? Engaged to local craftsman Caleb Reed? I've never heard that name in my life. We met recently. It happened quickly. How recently? You were in the office 3 days ago showing no signs of attachment. Sometimes you meet someone and just know. The lie tasted bitter. Isn't that what you wanted? A marriage to satisfy Castellano? I wanted you married to someone appropriate. Someone from our world who understands the expectations. Not some small-town nobody you picked up on a whim. Ilara's grip tightened on the phone. Caleb Reed is a successful business owner, a devoted father, and the man I'm going to marry. If Castellano has problems with that, he can take his merger elsewhere. You're bluffing. You need this deal as much as we do. Maybe, but I won't let you dictate my personal life beyond what's already required. I'm providing the marriage you demanded. The specific groom is my choice. Richard was silent for a beat. I'll need to meet him. Video call tonight, 8 p.m. Make sure he understands what's expected. Fine. But father, if you insult him or make this harder than necessary, I'll walk from the merger entirely. Test me on that. She hung up before he could respond, hands shaking with adrenaline. Standing up to her father was a rare indulgence, one she usually couldn't afford. But something about Caleb's quiet dignity made her want to protect this arrangement from her world's corrosive judgment. At 3 p.m. exactly, Caleb's truck pulled up outside the diner. Alara watched from the window as he unbuckled Mia from her car seat, the little girl clutching Mr. Hoppy and chattering excitedly. They walked toward the entrance, hand in hand, and Alara felt an unexpected tightness in her chest at the picture they made. Father and daughter, complete in themselves, about to let a stranger into their careful world. The door chimed. Mia spotted her immediately and broke into a smile that could have powered the town's electrical grid. "The pretty lady. Daddy said you're going to help me feel better." Alara crouched down, meeting Mia at eye level. "I'm going to try very hard. Your daddy and I are going to make sure you get the best doctors." "Are you magic?" "No, sweetheart. Just someone with resources and determination." "What's resources?" Caleb rested a hand on Mia's shoulder. "It means she has ways to help that we don't, like having a toolbox for fixing things, but for people instead of furniture." "Oh." Mia considered this. "Can I have cocoa?" "Absolutely." Alara stood, gesturing to the booth. "Ruth makes the best in town, apparently." They settled in, Mia between them, and for the next hour, Alara experienced something entirely foreign, casual family time. Mia talked constantly, jumping from topic to topic with the fearless randomness of childhood. She explained her stuffed animals' personalities, described her kindergarten teacher, demonstrated how to make the perfect cocoa mustache, and periodically interrupted herself to cough in a way that made Caleb's expression shudder with worry. Through it all, Alara found herself not just listening, but engaging, asking questions, learning the geography of this child's small but vibrant world. When Mia asked if Alara had ever seen a real princess, she admitted no. When Mia asked if she liked butterflies, Alara confessed she'd never paid much attention to them. "Then you haven't been looking right," Mia said seriously. "Butterflies are everywhere, if you notice. Daddy says Mama became a butterfly after she died, so now they're special." The simple theology hit Alara like a wave. She glanced at Caleb, who was studying his coffee with fierce concentration. "That's a beautiful way to remember her," Alara said softly. "Do you have a mama?" "I do. She lives in Manhattan, where I work." "Is she nice?" Alara almost laughed at the question's directness. "She's elegant, proper, very focused on appearances and social standing." "That sounds lonely." "Out of the mouths of children," Alara thought. "Sometimes it is." "Well, now you'll have us," Mia announced with the confident generosity of the very young. "We're good at not being lonely." "Right, Daddy?" Caleb's smile was strained but genuine. "Right, Butterfly." "Mia, there's something else we need to talk about." Alara chose her words carefully. "You know how your daddy and I just met? Well, sometimes grown-ups meet and decide they want to be a family together. That's what's happening with us." Mia's eyes went wide. "Like in the movies?" "Something like that, which means I'm going to be around a lot more. And we'll need to go to New York for your surgery, so I can make sure you have everything you need." "Will you be my new mama?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Alara felt Caleb tense beside his daughter, waiting to see how she'd handle this minefield. "I'll be your father's wife, which makes me your stepmother. But I'm not trying to replace your mama. Nobody could do that. I'm just going to be another adult in your life who cares about you." "Okay." Mia seemed satisfied with this answer, attention already shifting. "Can I have a kitten when we go to New York?" "Mia," Caleb started, but Alara surprised them both by answering. "If the doctor says you're well enough after surgery and your father agrees, we can discuss a kitten." "Really?" Mia bounced in her seat, then dissolved into another coughing fit that stole the joy from the moment. Caleb held her through it, practiced movement speaking to countless repetitions. When she finally caught her breath, she looked smaller, exhausted, the vibrant child suddenly fragile. "I'm tired, Daddy." "I know, Butterfly. Let's get you home for a nap." They gathered belongings, preparing to leave, when Mia turned back to Alara. "Will you come have dinner with us? Daddy makes really good spaghetti." Alara glanced at Caleb, reading the resignation in his expression. They were doing this now, crossing from contract into something resembling reality. "I'd like that very much." The house Caleb rented sat 3 blocks from the workshop, a small bungalow with a garden that had clearly been Emily's domain and was now struggling in Caleb's uncertain care. Inside was clean but cluttered with the evidence of child rearing, toys in corners, drawings on the refrigerator, a calendar covered in stickers marking good behavior days. While Caleb put Mia down for her nap, Alara stood in the living room studying framed photographs. Most featured Emily, a woman with kind eyes and an infectious smile, captured in moments of obvious joy. Wedding photos, pregnancy shots, countless images of her with infant Mia. The narrative was clear. This had been a love match, a real marriage built on genuine affection. Everything hers and Caleb's would never be. She was beautiful, Alara said when Caleb returned. Yeah. He moved to stand beside her, voice thick. She was. How did you meet? College. She was an art student. I was studying architecture before I switched to carpentry. She painted. I built things. We fit. He reached out, straightening one of the frames. When she got sick, she made me promise I'd keep living after she was gone, that I'd let Mia see happiness, not just grief. I've been trying to honor that, but it's harder than I expected. This arrangement must feel like a betrayal of her memory. It feels like survival, which is worse somehow. He turned away from the photographs. My parents called this afternoon. They heard the news. I told them we met a few weeks ago and things moved fast. They think I've lost my mind with grief. What did you tell them? That Mia loves you already, and that's enough for me to take a chance. He laughed bitterly. The lies come easier than I thought they would. I'm sorry for putting you in this position. Are you? Because from where I stand, you got exactly what you wanted. A convenient husband who won't complicate your life. The accusation stung. You're right, I did. But that doesn't mean I don't recognize the cost to you. The cost is my integrity, my honesty, the trust of everyone I know. He moved into the kitchen, pulling out ingredients for dinner with practiced efficiency. But Mia gets to live, so I'll pay it. Just don't expect me to be grateful for the opportunity. They cooked in tense silence, Alara chopping vegetables at his direction while he handled the sauce. It was surreal, this domestic tableau that mimicked partnership while containing none of its warmth. When Mia woke and joined them, the atmosphere shifted slightly, her presence demanding performance. Dinner was surprisingly pleasant on the surface. Mia chattered about her upcoming surgery with the fearless optimism of a child who didn't fully understand what awaited her. Caleb maintained steady calm, answering her questions with careful honesty, and Alara found herself swept into the rhythm of it, setting the table, pouring milk, wiping sauce from Mia's chin like these were things she'd always known how to do. Afterward, Caleb carried Mia to bed while Alara cleaned the kitchen. She was loading the dishwasher when her phone buzzed, her father, demanding the video call early. She answered, tilting the screen to show the homey kitchen behind her. Where are you? Caleb's house. We just finished dinner. Richard's expression could have frozen water. Put him on. I want to meet this man who convinced my daughter to upend her life. Alara walked to the living room where Caleb had just emerged from Mia's bedroom. She held up the phone. My father wants to meet you. Caleb's jaw tightened, but he took the phone, positioning himself in frame. Mr. Vaughn. Mr. Reed, I'll be direct. What are your intentions toward my daughter? To marry her tomorrow and support her in whatever way she needs. You're a carpenter in a town I've never heard of. What could you possibly offer someone of Alara's stature? Alara moved to take the phone back, but Caleb held it steady, something dangerous in his expression. I offer honesty, stability, and the kind of grounded perspective someone in your daughter's position desperately needs. I'm not impressed by her money or intimidated by her power. I see her as a person, not a portfolio. Can you say the same? The silence on the other end was arctic. Then, you're either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both. But I'm the man she's chosen, so you'll need to accept that. We'll see how long that lasts. Richard's gaze shifted to Alara. I'm informing the Castellanos tomorrow. They'll want to meet him before finalizing anything. Fine. We'll arrange it. Alara took the phone back. Good night, Father. She hung up before he could respond. Caleb was staring at her with something between shock and grudging respect. Did I just torpedo your merger? No, you just convinced my father you're not someone he can manipulate. That's actually in our favor. She smiled despite the tension. Thank you for standing up to him. Most people don't. I've got nothing to lose except what I've already sold. He sank onto the couch, exhaustion evident. When do we do this? The actual marriage? Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., courthouse. I'll handle all the arrangements. What should I wear? Whatever makes you comfortable. This isn't a performance, it's a legal formality. Everything about this is a performance. But he nodded. Fine, I'll wear my good suit. The one I bought for Emily's funeral. The detail hit harder than intended. Alara sat beside him, maintaining careful distance. Caleb, I know this is... Don't. He cut her off. Don't try to make this easier or better. We both know what this is. Let's just get through it. They sat in silence until Alara's phone buzzed again. Her assistant confirming arrangements, her lawyer verifying filings, her world pulling her back toward responsibilities. She stood reluctantly. I should go. Early day tomorrow. Caleb walked her to the door. On the porch, under the dim light, he spoke quietly. I need one promise from you, Alara. One real promise, not a contract clause. Name it. If anything happens to me during this year, accident, illness, whatever, you'll take care of Mia. Actually take care of her, not just fund her expenses. She'll need someone. The request was enormous, terrifying. Alara wanted to deflect, to point out she was the last person qualified for such responsibility. But looking at Caleb's face, reading the desperation beneath his calm, she couldn't refuse. I promise. If something happens to you, I'll make sure Mia has everything she needs, including care and stability. You have my word. Not as a business agreement, as a person. As a person, she repeated softly. I promise. Something eased in his expression. Then I'll see you at the courthouse tomorrow. Try to get some sleep. You too. She walked back to the hotel through streets now familiar, her mind spinning with the magnitude of what she'd set in motion. In less than 24 hours, she'd be married to a man she barely knew, legally responsible for a child she hadn't planned for, bound by contracts that felt both too specific and nowhere near comprehensive enough. But she'd also secured the merger, protected her position, and saved a little girl's life. In her world, that counted as a win, even if it felt nothing like victory. The courthouse ceremony took 12 minutes. Alara arrived first, dressed in a simple cream suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, but looked understated enough to avoid spectacle. Her assistant had flown in to serve as witness, along with Margaret Chen, who'd insisted on being present despite Alara's protests. They waited in the hallway outside the judge's chambers, Margaret studying Alara with concern that bordered on maternal. You're sure about this? Too late for doubts now. Alara checked her watch. 9:58. It's never too late. We could find another way to handle Castellano. There is no other way. We've been over this. We could try honesty. Tell him the board's demands are outdated and discriminatory. Alara laughed without humor. You really think a traditional Italian businessman in his 70s will respond to arguments about discrimination? He wants what he wants. A stable family woman running the company he's investing in. This gives him that. At what cost? Before Alara could answer, Caleb appeared at the end of the hallway. He wore a charcoal suit that had clearly been tailored for a body carrying less tension, the fabric hanging slightly loose across shoulders that had narrowed with grief and stress. Behind him, Ruth and her husband flanked Mia, who wore a white dress with pink flowers and carried Mr. Hoppy like a sacred talisman. The little girl's face lit up when she saw Alara. You look like a princess. Thank you, sweetheart. You look beautiful too. Mia rushed forward, wrapping small arms around Alara's legs with unselfconscious affection. Over her head, Alara met Caleb's eyes and saw the same resignation she felt, the shared recognition that they were about to make something fake feel devastatingly real to everyone watching. The judge was a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and efficient movements. She ushered them into chambers that smelled like old books and lemon polish, arranged them before her desk, and began the ceremony with practiced warmth. Marriage is a sacred commitment, she began, and Alara felt Caleb tense beside her. It requires honesty, trust, and the willingness to put another person's needs alongside your own. Alara, Caleb, you've chosen to begin this journey together. Do you understand the gravity of what you're undertaking? We do, they said in unison, the lie smooth as silk. The judge smiled. Caleb Reed, do you take Alara Vaughn to be your lawfully wedded wife, To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, as long as you both shall live. Caleb's voice was steady. I do. Elora Vaughn, do you take Caleb Reed to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, as long as you both shall live? For one suspended moment, Elora felt the weight of what she was doing, the vows she was corrupting, the institution she was exploiting, the people she was deceiving. Then she thought of the boardroom, of Marcus Grayson sliding into her position, of everything she'd built crumbling because she couldn't manufacture the one thing society demanded. I do. The rings were simple gold bands purchased that morning from a jeweler in town who'd expedited the order without questions. Caleb's hands shook slightly as he slid the ring onto Elora's finger, the metal foreign and binding. When it was her turn, she noticed how worn his hands were, how the calluses caught against the smooth band, how wrong it felt to mark him with this symbol of something that didn't exist. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Caleb leaned in, the movement mechanical, and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that lasted exactly 2 seconds and contained zero emotion. It felt like signing another contract. Mia clapped enthusiastically. Ruth dabbed at tears. Margaret looked like she was attending a funeral. And just like that, Elora Vaughn became Elora Reed, at least on paper. They signed the marriage certificate in silence, witnessed by people who believed they were celebrating love when they were actually documenting a transaction. Outside the courthouse, photographers had somehow materialized despite Elora's attempts at discretion. She and Caleb posed for exactly 3 pictures before she guided them toward the waiting car, Mia chattering excitedly about weddings and cake and whether this meant they were a family now. It means we're going to take care of each other, Caleb told his daughter, voice tight. All of us together. The drive to Columbia Presbyterian took 4 hours. Elora had arranged for a car service, a spacious SUV with room for Mia to nap and enough distance between the front and back seats to create the illusion of privacy. She spent most of the journey on phone calls, handling business while Caleb stared out the window and Mia slept against his shoulder. When they finally reached Manhattan, Mia woke to stare wide-eyed at the buildings stretching toward the sky. Everything's so tall. Welcome to the city, butterfly, Caleb murmured, though his expression suggested he felt anything but welcoming. Elora had arranged for them to stay at her penthouse rather than a hotel. It was practical, closer to the hospital, more comfortable for Mia, and it would look better to observers that they were living as an actual married couple. The doorman greeted her with professional warmth, eyeing Caleb and Mia with barely concealed curiosity. Welcome home, Ms. Vaughn. Shall I help with the luggage? Please, this is my husband Caleb and his daughter Mia. They'll be staying indefinitely. If the doorman was surprised by this announcement, he hit it perfectly. Of course. Welcome to the building, Mr. Reed, Miss Mia. The elevator ride to the 40th floor felt eternal, mirrors reflecting their mismatched trio from every angle. When the doors opened directly into her penthouse, Mia gasped. The space was exactly what someone would expect from a billionaire heiress. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, modern furniture in shades of white and gray, artwork that cost more than houses, everything precisely placed and utterly impersonal. It looked like a magazine spread, not a home. It's like a castle, Mia breathed. It's an apartment, Elora corrected gently. Your room is this way. She'd had her assistant prepare the guest suite, stocking it with appropriate furniture, toys, and books based on Mia's age. But seeing it through the child's eyes, she recognized how sterile it looked despite the efforts, generic in a way that spoke to being assembled by strangers rather than chosen with love. Caleb set down their bags, taking in the room with an expression she couldn't read. This is generous. Thank you. There's an adjoining room for you. I assumed you'd want to be close to her. And where will you be? Master Suite at the other end. I thought distance would be easier. For who? The question hung between them, sharp with implications. Before Elora could answer, Mia had discovered the window seat overlooking the park and was calling them to see the view. They stood together, looking out at the city lights beginning to glow in the dusk, Three people playing house in a fortress of glass and steel. That night, after Mia was asleep and Caleb had retreated to his room, Alara stood in her own space and felt the weight of what she'd done settle into her bones. She was married, legally bound to a man she'd known for less than a week, responsible for a child who might not survive the surgery scheduled for 7 days from now. Her phone rang. Antonio Castellano's number. Mr. Castellano, good evening. Alara, I hear congratulations are in order. Married quite suddenly, yes? His accent was thick, his tone suspicious. Alara kept her voice warm. When you meet the right person, why wait? Life is short. Indeed. I would like to meet this husband of yours, and the child I hear about. Family dinner tomorrow evening. My home in Connecticut. No business, just getting to know each other. It wasn't a request. We'd be honored. Though I should mention Mia has some health challenges. She tires easily. Then we eat early, 6 o'clock. I send a car. He hung up before she could respond. Alara immediately texted Caleb, knowing he was likely still awake. Castellano wants to meet tomorrow. Dinner at his house, 6 p.m. We need to be convincing. The response came quickly. Define convincing. Like we're actually married, like this is real. A long pause, then, I'll try. But I'm not an actor. Neither am I. But we both need this to work, for very different reasons. She stared at the text, hearing the accusation beneath it. He was doing this for his daughter's life. She was doing it for her career. The moral high ground was clearly his, yet they were equally trapped in the arrangement they'd created. The next evening found them in the back of a town car heading to Greenwich, Connecticut. Mia wore a new dress Alara had purchased that afternoon, soft blue cotton that made her look less pale. Caleb had donned his wedding suit again, and Alara wore understated elegance. Chanel, but not obviously so. Pearls that had belonged to her grandmother. Hair in a simple chignon. Remember, she coached quietly while Mia played with her tablet, we met a few weeks ago when I was passing through Millbrook. We connected immediately. The relationship moved fast because we're both at stages in life where we know what we want. And what do I want exactly? Caleb's voice was dry. Stability for Mia. Partnership. Someone who appreciates what you've built and respects your values. And what do you want? Someone genuine, grounded, different from my usual world. She met his eyes. Someone who makes me want to slow down and actually live instead of just achieving. That's surprisingly close to the truth. The best lies usually are. The Castellano estate was exactly as Alara expected. Old money presented in stone and landscaping, the kind of wealth that whispered rather than shouted. They were greeted by staff and ushered into a sitting room where Antonio Castellano waited with his wife Maria, an elegant woman with sharp eyes and a warm smile. Alara, finally we meet the mysterious husband. Antonio clasped Caleb's hand in a grip that was clearly a test. Caleb Reed, I research you. Carpenter, widower, small-town man. That's accurate, Caleb replied evenly. My father was carpenter in Italy before we come to America, before the restaurants, before everything. Antonio's expression softened slightly. Good work, honest work. I respect this. Maria moved to Mia, crouching down with grandmotherly warmth. And who is this beautiful angel? I'm Mia. I'm 5 3/4, and I'm having heart surgery next week. The announcement was delivered with the casual directness of children who haven't learned to hide difficult truths. Maria's hand flew to her chest. Oh, Piccola, you are so brave. The doctors say I'll feel much better after, and Alara promised if I'm good I might get a kitten. Mia looked up at Alara with absolute trust, and something in Alara's chest constricted. Alara is right. Every child should have a kitten. Maria stood, eyes gleaming with assessment as she looked between Alara and Caleb. Come, dinner is ready. We eat, we talk, we get to know family. The dining room was intimate despite its size, the table set for 6 with obvious care. Throughout the meal, Antonio asked questions, some directed at Caleb's business, others at their relationship, all designed to probe for weaknesses or inconsistencies. But Caleb navigated each query with honest simplicity, never overselling, never performing beyond what was required. When Antonio asked how they met, Caleb described Alara arriving at his workshop late at night, lost and looking for help. She was unlike anyone I'd ever encountered, confident but exhausted, running from something she wouldn't name. And you were running too? Antonio pressed. From grief. From the assumption that I'd never feel anything but loss again. Caleb glanced at Alara, and for a moment his performance was so good she almost believed it herself. Then this woman showed up asking strange questions and looking at my work like it actually mattered, and I started wondering if maybe there was more to life than just surviving. Maria's eyes actually misted. Even Antonio looked moved. And the child? Antonio asked. Many women don't want the complications of stepchildren. Alara reached across the table, covering Mia's small hand with hers. Mia isn't a complication. She's the best part of this entire arrangement. The word arrangement nearly gave them away, but she caught herself, smoothing it into something else. The best part of this entire change in my life. I never thought I wanted children. Then I met this one and realized I'd just never met the right child. Mia beamed up at her, and Alara felt the weight of that trust like physical pressure. After dinner, while Maria took Mia to see her garden, Antonio invited Caleb and Alara to his study. The room smelled of cigars and old leather, power preserved in wood paneling and expensive scotch. I am satisfied, Antonio announced without preamble. My lawyers will finalize the merger papers next week. But I tell you something, Alara, because I like you and I respect what you build. What's that? Marriage is not business deal. I know some people think this way, make arrangements for convenience or benefit, but real marriage, he gestured between them. Real marriage requires work, compromise, putting other person first sometimes. You think you ready for this? Caleb spoke before Alara could. With respect, Mr. Castellano, every marriage is different. What works for one couple might not work for another. Alara and I understand each other. We know what we're building and why. That's enough. Antonio studied them both, then nodded slowly. Maybe you're right. Maybe understanding is better foundation than passion. Passion burns out. Understanding lasts. He raised his glass. To understanding, then, and to new family. They toasted, the crystal ringing like a bell or a warning. The drive back to Manhattan was quiet. Mia fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the evening's excitement. In the darkness of the car, Caleb finally spoke. You were good tonight, convincing. So were you. That speech about me mattering, I almost believed it. Parts of it were true. You did show up asking strange questions, and I was drowning in grief. He turned to look at her, features shadowed. But the part about you making me wonder if there was more to life? That was pure fiction. I know. Do you? Because Mia doesn't know. She thinks this is real. She told Maria we're a family now, that you're going to be her new mother. Do you understand what that means? Alara kept her voice low, conscious of the sleeping child. It means we need to be careful when this ends. We need to prepare her, help her understand that sometimes people care about each other but still can't stay together. She's 5 years old. She won't understand that. She'll just know another person left her. The accusation landed hard. I'm not leaving her. The contract specifies ongoing financial support for her care and education. She'll be provided for. Money isn't the same as presence. It's what I have to offer. That's the saddest thing you've ever said. Caleb turned back to the window. And you've said a lot of sad things. They didn't speak again until the car pulled up to her building. The doorman helped with Mia, Caleb carrying his sleeping daughter through the lobby while Alara managed their belongings, the three of them looking exactly like what they were pretending to be, a family coming home after a long evening. Once inside the penthouse, Caleb put Mia to bed without waking her, then returned to find Alara in the kitchen, staring at a glass of wine she'd poured but hadn't touched. I got an email from Dr. Chen's office, she said without preamble. Mia's surgery is scheduled for Friday. They want her there Wednesday for preliminary testing and preparation. That's only 5 days away. They moved quickly because of her declining condition. Dr. Chen reviewed the most recent scans and said waiting could be dangerous. Caleb sank into one of the bar stools, the energy draining from him like water. 5 days, and then they cut into my daughter's heart and hope everything goes right. Dr. Chen is the best in the country. The success rate, I know the statistics. I've memorized them. 98% success rate sounds great until you realize your child could be in that 2%. His hands shook as he ran them through his hair. What if I made the wrong choice? What if this whole arrangement, this deal with you, what if it's all for nothing because she doesn't make it through? Alara moved around the counter, standing close but not touching. Then we'll have given her every possible chance. The alternative was awaiting 6 months with her condition deteriorating. At least this way, she has the best care available immediately. Care you're paying for with a marriage that's a lie. Care she needs regardless of how we're funding it. Does the how ever matter to you, or is it always just about the what and the results? The question cut deep because it was fair. Alara had spent her entire life focused on outcomes, treating methods as purely tactical considerations. But standing here looking at a father's fear for his dying child, she felt something shift. It matters, she said quietly. More than I want to admit. But I also know that perfect morality is a luxury people with resources can afford. You needed money to save Mia. I needed a marriage to save my career. We're both compromising our ideals for survival. Neither of us gets to claim moral superiority. Caleb laughed bitterly. You really have an answer for everything, don't you? Not answers, just frameworks for understanding impossible choices. Is that what you tell yourself? That this is just an impossible choice you're managing efficiently? What else would I call it? A mistake. A disaster waiting to happen. A house of cards that's going to collapse and hurt everyone involved. Then why did you agree to it? Because I'm desperate. Because watching my daughter struggle to breathe and knowing I can't fix it is killing me. Because when you offered me a way to save her, I couldn't say no, even though every instinct told me this would end badly. He stood abruptly, pacing the length of the kitchen. But you're not desperate, you're calculated. You engineered this entire situation to solve a problem. And the fact that you can sleep at night after doing that terrifies me. I'm not sleeping well, if that helps. It doesn't. They stood in hostile silence, the space between them crackling with everything unsaid. Finally, Caleb moved toward his room, pausing at the doorway. I need to ask you something, and I want complete honesty. When this year is over and we go our separate ways, what happens to Mia? Do you just disappear from her life? Send checks and birthday cards but never actually show up? Alara wanted to say yes. That was exactly the plan. Clean separation, minimal complications. But looking at Caleb's face, thinking of Mia's trust, she found herself speaking different words. I don't know. I haven't figured that part out yet. Well, figure it out, because she's already attached to you, and when you leave, it's going to break something in her. He paused. Maybe it'll break something in all of us. After he left, Alara stood alone in her gleaming kitchen, surrounded by expensive appliances and designer finishes, feeling emptier than she had in years. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through work emails that suddenly felt meaningless, bored communications that rang hollow. One email stood out, from her father. Castellano called. Said you passed his test. Congratulations. The merger will proceed. You've done what was necessary. Now don't let emotions complicate things. Remember what matters. She deleted it without responding, then walked to the window overlooking the park. 40 floors below, the city moved in patterns of light and shadow, millions of people living their complicated lives. Somewhere down there were real marriages built on real love, families that had formed through choice rather than contract, children being raised by people who'd actually wanted them. And here she was, in her glass tower, playing pretend with people's lives because she'd built a world where pretend was safer than real. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Caleb. I shouldn't have said those things. I'm scared about the surgery and taking it out on you. I'm sorry. She stared at the message, surprised by the apology. She typed and deleted several responses before settling on, You weren't wrong about any of it, maybe, but we're stuck with each other for now. Might as well try to make it bearable. Agreed. Truce? Truce. Alara set down her phone and caught her reflection in the window glass, seeing herself superimposed over the city lights. She looked successful, powerful, in control, everything she'd worked to become. She also looked profoundly alone. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of hospital appointments, test results, and increasing anxiety. Dr. Chen was everything Alara had promised. Brilliant, compassionate, completely honest about risks and expectations. She explained the surgery in detail, showing them diagrams of Mia's heart, the valves that needed repair, the delicate work required to correct years of deterioration. The good news is we caught it before permanent damage, Dr. Chen said during Wednesday's consultation. The bad news is her condition has declined faster than I'd like. We need to move quickly. Mia sat through it all with remarkable bravery, asking questions that made the adults' hearts break. Will it hurt? How long will I be asleep? Can Mr. Hoppy come to the operating room? Yes, Dr. Chen assured her. Mr. Hoppy could definitely come to the operating room. That night, their last before surgery, Caleb asked Alara to help with Mia's bedtime routine. She asked for you specifically, said she wants both of us there. They read her favorite story about a brave butterfly who traveled the world. Mia nestled between them on the bed, her small body fitting perfectly against their larger ones. When the story ended, she looked up at Alara with solemn eyes. Will you be there when I wake up, after the surgery? I'll be right there, Alara promised. Your dad and I both will. Even though you have important business, you're more important than any business. The words came out before Alara could filter them, and she felt Caleb's sharp glance. But Mia just smiled, satisfied, and snuggled deeper under her covers. I love you, she whispered to both of them, the words simple and devastating. Caleb answered immediately. I love you too, Butterfly, more than anything in the world. Alara's throat closed. She couldn't say those words. They were too big, too binding, too dangerous for someone who'd promised not to get attached. Instead, she brushed hair from Mia's forehead and whispered, Sleep well, sweetheart. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. Outside Mia's room, Caleb stopped her. She said she loves you. I know. And you couldn't say it back. It wouldn't be fair to her. She needs to understand the boundaries of this arrangement. She's 5 years old. She doesn't understand arrangements. She just knows you're here and you're taking care of her, and that feels like family. His voice broke. And when you leave, she's going to think she did something wrong, that she wasn't enough to make you stay. That's not true. I'll explain. You can't explain this to a child. There's no explanation that makes abandonment okay. I'm not abandoning her. I'm honoring the terms of our agreement. Agreements can change. People can change. He was nearly shouting now, frustration and fear spilling over. Unless you're so terrified of actual human connection that you'd rather hide behind contracts than admit you might actually care about what happens to us. The accusation hit like a slap. That's not fair. None of this is fair. But we're here anyway, so maybe instead of counting down the days until you can escape, you could try actually being present for the time we have. I am present. I arranged the surgery. I'm here every day. I'm doing everything I promised. You're doing everything except feeling anything. And that's the one thing Mia actually needs from you. They stared at each other, breathing hard, the space between them charged with anger and fear, and something neither wanted to name. Finally, Caleb turned away. Get some sleep. We need to be at the hospital at 5 a.m. He disappeared into his room, leaving Alara standing in the hallway of her own home feeling like an intruder. She retreated to her bedroom, but sleep was impossible. Instead, she pulled out the contract they'd both signed, reading through clauses that had seemed so clear a week ago and now felt impossibly inadequate. Nothing in the legal language covered this. The way Mia's laughter had started to feel necessary. How Caleb's quiet strength had become something she leaned on without meaning to. The creeping recognition that somewhere in the performance of family, she'd started wanting the real thing. But wanting didn't change the fundamental truth. She'd built this arrangement on lies, and lies couldn't transform into authentic foundation no matter how much she wished otherwise. At 4 a.m., she gave up on sleep and dressed in comfortable clothes suitable for a long hospital day. When she emerged, Caleb was already awake, making coffee with mechanical movements. They didn't speak, loading into the car service in silence while Mia dozed between them. The hospital loomed against the early morning sky, all glass and steel in harsh fluorescent promise. They checked in through a side entrance reserved for surgical patients, following nurses through corridors that smelled of antiseptic and fear. In the pre-op room, Mia was fitted with a hospital gown and an IV line, the medical preparation stripping away her childish joy until she looked small and terrified. She clutched Mr. Hoppy with one hand and reached for Alara with the other. I'm scared. Alara took her hand, feeling the fragile bones, the trust in that grip. That's okay. It's okay to be scared, but remember what Dr. Chen said? She's going to fix your heart so it works perfectly, and when you wake up, you'll feel so much better. Promise? It was the one promise Alara couldn't make, the one guarantee no contract could provide. But looking into Mia's eyes, she found herself lying anyway. I promise, and we'll be right here waiting when you wake up. Doctor. Chen appeared in her surgical scrubs, calm and confident. Ready, Mia? We're going to take excellent care of you. They wheeled her toward the operating room, Caleb and Alara following until the restricted point where only patients and medical staff could pass. At the doorway, Caleb kissed his daughter's forehead, whispering something Alara couldn't hear. Then those doors closed and Mia disappeared from view. The waiting began. The surgical waiting room existed in its own pocket of suspended time, where minutes stretched like hours, and every sound felt amplified. Caleb sat rigid in one of the molded plastic chairs, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Alara perched beside him, her phone face down on her lap, every instinct screaming at her to check emails, make calls, do something productive instead of just sitting in this terrible stillness. How long did Dr. Chen say? Caleb's voice was hoarse. 4 to 6 hours depending on what they find when they're inside. He nodded, swallowing hard. Emily's surgery took 8 hours. I sat in a room like this, waiting, thinking if I just stayed calm and positive and believed hard enough, she'd be okay. His laugh was broken. Didn't work. Alara reached for his hand without thinking, lacing her fingers through his. Mia's not Emily. Different diagnosis, different odds, different outcome. You can't know that. No, but I can choose to believe it until proven otherwise. He looked down at their joined hands, surprised. That's very uncharacteristic of you. I thought you only dealt in certainties and contracts. Turns out I'm learning there are some things you can't control with paperwork and money. She tightened her grip. So for now, we wait. And we hope. Together. Something shifted in Caleb's expression, the anger from last night softening into something more vulnerable. I'm glad you're here. I know that's probably not in the contract specifications, but I needed to say it. Doing this alone would be... His voice cracked. I couldn't do this alone. You're not alone. Whatever else is complicated about this arrangement, that part is simple. I'm here. They sat in silence, hands clasped, while the waiting room slowly filled with other families facing their own medical crises. An elderly couple holding hands, a young mother pacing with a rosary, a teenager with his head in his hands, each of them trapped in this liminal space between before and after, hope and devastation. Alara's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her father, demanding an update on the Castellano merger. She silenced it without reading the full message. You can take that if you need to, Caleb said quietly. I don't need to. Not right now. The merger meeting is Monday, isn't it? If Mia's still in recovery, then I'll miss the meeting. The words came out before she'd fully processed them, but once spoken, she knew they were true. They can proceed without me for one session, or they can wait. I'm not leaving her while she's vulnerable. Caleb stared at her. You'd really do that? Risk the merger you've been fighting for? I'd postpone a meeting. There's a difference. But even as she said it, Alara recognized the significance. 2 weeks ago, she would have scheduled surgery around business commitments. Now she was scheduling business around a child's recovery. When had that shift happened? When had Mia stopped being a justification for the arrangement and become someone Alara actually cared about protecting? The answer was uncomfortable. Probably the moment that little girl had looked up at her with absolute trust and said, I love you. An hour passed, then 2. Caleb couldn't sit still, alternating between pacing and attempting to read magazines he couldn't focus on. Alara made coffee runs, brought food neither of them could eat, and maintained a steady stream of quiet conversation about nothing important just to fill the terrible silence. At the 3-hour mark, Caleb's parents arrived, having driven through the night from Millbrook. His mother, Patricia, was a petite woman with Caleb's gray eyes and worry etched into every line of her face. His father, Tom, was tall and weathered, clearly uncomfortable in the sterile hospital environment. Any news? Patricia pulled Caleb into a fierce hug. Not yet. Dr. Chen said someone would update us at the halfway point. Patricia turned to Alara, assessment sharp despite her distress. You must be the new wife. We haven't formally met. Alara stood, extending her hand. Alara, I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. Yes, well. Patricia's handshake was brief, her tone cool. When Caleb called to say he'd gotten married to someone he'd known for 3 weeks, we thought he'd lost his mind with grief. Then we heard about Mia's surgery being moved up, and suddenly it all made more sense. The implication hung heavy. Alara felt Caleb tense beside her. Mom, don't... I'm not saying anything unkind, sweetheart. I'm just observing that it's convenient timing. Patricia's gaze was penetrating. Mia needed expensive surgery. You found a wealthy wife. I'm sure it's all perfectly innocent. Patricia. Tom's voice carried a warning, but the damage was done. Alara felt the familiar armor sliding into place, the defensive shield she'd spent years perfecting. You're right. The timing is convenient. I won't pretend otherwise. But whatever you think about how Caleb and I came together, Mia is getting the best cardiac care in the country. Isn't that what matters? What matters is whether you're using my granddaughter's illness to buy yourself a ready-made family because you couldn't be bothered to build one, honestly. Patricia's voice was quiet but cutting. Rich people do that, you know. Acquire things they want without earning them. Mom, that's enough. Caleb stepped between them. Alara didn't buy anything. We made choices, difficult choices, that worked for both of us. You don't get to judge that. I get to judge when my son marries a stranger and my granddaughter is caught in the middle. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. You loved Emily. You had something real, and now you're playing house with someone who probably has a prenup thicker than your marriage vows. The accuracy of that observation should have stung, but Alara was too exhausted for shame. I do have a prenup, a comprehensive one. And you're right that I didn't earn a place in this family through years of shared history. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere while Mia needs us. So you can either accept that or make this harder for everyone, including your son. Patricia opened her mouth to respond, but Tom placed a hand on her shoulder. That's enough, Trish. Let's get some coffee. Give them space. After they left, Caleb sank back into his chair, head in his hands. I'm sorry. She's terrified and taking it out on you. She's not wrong, though, about any of it. She's not entirely right either. He looked up, exhaustion evident in every line of his face. This whole thing is complicated. We both know that. But it doesn't mean you're not genuinely here for Mia. I see the way you are with her. That's not performance. How do you know? Maybe I'm just a very good actress. Because good actresses remember their lines. You keep forgetting this is supposed to be fake. The observation landed with uncomfortable accuracy. Alara started to respond, but the surgical doors opened and Dr. Chen appeared, still in her scrubs, surgical cap in hand. Every person in the waiting room looked up hopefully, but the doctor's eyes found Caleb and Alara. We're at the halfway point. I wanted to give you an update. She gestured to a quiet corner and they followed on shaking legs. The surgery is progressing well. The valve damage was extensive, but we're repairing it successfully. Her heart is responding exactly as we hoped. Caleb's knees actually buckled. Alara caught his arm, supporting his weight while relief flooded through her own body. So she's okay? His voice was barely a whisper. She's tolerating the procedure beautifully. We still have significant work ahead, the second valve and arterial repair. But I'm optimistic. Her heart is stronger than the scans suggested. When will you be finished? Another 2 to 3 hours, then recovery. You won't be able to see her for about an hour after that, but I'll come find you the moment we're done. After Dr. Chen left, Caleb turned to Alara and pulled her into a hug so sudden and tight it knocked the breath from her lungs. She stood frozen for a moment, then slowly wrapped her arms around him, feeling his body shake with silent sobs against her shoulder. She's going to be okay, he kept repeating. She's going to be okay. She is. Alara held him tighter, surprised by how natural this felt, how right it seemed to be the person he turned to in this moment. She's going to be fine. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were red but clearer than she'd seen them in days. Thank you for all of this. I know we've got this complicated arrangement and I've said some harsh things, but right now in this moment, thank you. You don't need to thank me. I do. Because you didn't have to care as much as you clearly do. You could have just written the checks and stayed detached. But you're here, and you're invested, and that means something. Before Alara could respond, her phone buzzed insistently. She glanced down to see multiple messages from her assistant, her father, and Margaret Chen. The last one made her stomach drop. Emergency board meeting called for Monday 9 a.m. Marcus is making a move. You need to be there or you'll lose everything. She read it twice, the implications settling like stones. Marcus Grayson wasn't waiting for the merger to be finalized. He was challenging her position now, using her absence during Mia's surgery as evidence of her unreliability. What is it? Caleb asked, reading her expression. Work crisis. Something I need to deal with Monday morning. The meeting you said you'd skip if Mia was still in recovery? Yes, but... She stopped, recognizing the trap. If she stayed with Mia, she'd likely lose her CEO position. If she went to the meeting, she'd be abandoning a child who'd just had major surgery. There was no good choice, no clean solution. But you have to go. Caleb's voice was flat. Because that's who you are. Business first, everything else second. That's not fair. This isn't just a meeting. It's my entire career on the line. And Mia is my daughter's life on the line, but we made choices about priorities when we started this arrangement. I just thought maybe yours had shifted. They have shifted. I'm here, aren't I? I've been here through all of this. Until it costs you something real. Then suddenly the contract terms matter more than the actual people involved. They were drawing attention from other families in the waiting room. Alara lowered her voice, anger and guilt warring inside her. You knew what you were signing up for. A year of my time in exchange for Mia's surgery. I fulfilled my part of that agreement and more. Don't pretend you expected something different. I expected basic human decency. My daughter is going to wake up from heart surgery and want both her parents there. Not just me, both of us. Because that's what we promised her. I can be back by afternoon. The meeting will only take a few hours. And if there are complications, if she needs you and you're in some boardroom fighting for a position that clearly matters more to you than she does. That's not true. Then prove it. Stay. Let the meeting happen without you. Show me, show her that we're not just items on your balance sheet. Alara stared at him, heart pounding, the weight of the choice crushing down on her. Everything she'd built for 15 years hung in the balance. Her position, her reputation, her identity as someone who commanded respect through achievement and strategic brilliance. If she missed this meeting, Marcus would win. The board would see her as weak, compromised by personal obligations. She might never recover. But if she left Mia while the child was vulnerable, scared, recovering from having her chest cut open, would she be able to live with herself? Would she be able to look at that little girl's face and explain that a meeting was more important than being there when she woke up? The answer came with painful clarity. No, she wouldn't. I need to make some calls. She walked away before Caleb could respond, finding a quiet corridor outside the waiting room. Her hands shook as she dialed Margaret Chen's number. Alara, thank God. Have you seen the messages? Marcus is calling for a vote of no confidence. He's claiming your sudden marriage and absence proves you're not committed to the company. I know, and I need you to handle it. Silence. Then, what do you mean handle it? Represent me at the meeting. You're CFO. You know our numbers inside and out. You can counter every argument Marcus makes. Present the Castellano merger as a done deal. Show the board the projected growth. Make the case that my personal life has zero impact on my professional competence. Alara, I can do all that, but they want to hear from you. If you're not there, it looks like you're avoiding accountability. I know how it looks, but my stepdaughter just had open heart surgery, and I promised her I'd be there when she woke up. So either the board accepts that family emergencies exist, or they don't. But I'm not abandoning a 5-year-old to prove my dedication to a corporation. Another silence, longer this time. Did you just call her your stepdaughter? The question caught Alara off guard. She'd said it without thinking, the label slipping out naturally. She is, legally. No, I mean, you actually sounded like you meant it, like she's not just part of the arrangement, but actually your family. Alara stopped, unsure how to explain what she barely understood herself. Just handle the meeting, Margaret, please. Make them understand. I'll do my best. But Alara, whatever's happening with you, this change, it's good. You sound more human than you have in years. After she hung up, Alara returned to find Caleb exactly where she'd left him, though his parents had rejoined him. She sat down beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. I'm staying. I called my CFO. She'll handle the meeting. Caleb turned to her, surprise evident. You're serious. Completely. You're right. Mia needs both of us here, and maybe my board needs to learn that I'm capable of prioritizing appropriately. She tried for a smile. Besides, if they fire me over this, at least I'll have a dramatic story for why my CEO career ended. You might actually lose your position over this. Maybe. Probably. The fear was real, but so was the strange sense of relief. But I'll still have my integrity, and I'll be able to look Mia in the eye and tell her she mattered enough for me to stay. Patricia, who'd been listening silently, spoke up for the first time since her earlier attack. That was a brave choice, and expensive. Some things are worth more than money or power. Alara met the older woman's gaze steadily. I'm learning that, even if I'm a slow student. Something softened in Patricia's expression, not quite acceptance, but perhaps the beginning of it. My son is a good man who's been through hell. If you hurt him or my granddaughter, wealthy or not, you'll answer to me. Understood. And fair. Tom cleared his throat. Well, now that we've established the ground rules, anyone want terrible hospital cafeteria coffee? I'm buying. The tension broke slightly. Over the next 2 hours, they maintained an awkward vigil together. Patricia slowly warming to Alara as she shared stories about Mia's early years, Caleb's late wife, the tight-knit community of Millbrook that had rallied around them after Emily's death. Alara listened, piecing together the life Caleb had lived before she'd bulldozed into it with her contracts and complications. Finally, after what felt like forever, Dr. Chen reappeared, this time with a tired smile. She did beautifully. The surgery was successful. We've moved her to recovery. Caleb made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Patricia started crying in earnest. Tom wrapped an arm around his wife while Alara sat frozen, the relief so overwhelming it felt almost painful. Can we see her? Caleb asked. Soon. She's still heavily sedated, but you can sit with her in about 30 minutes. Just family for now, 2 visitors at a time. Caleb immediately turned to Alara. You should go in with me. She'll want to see you. Your parents should... We'll take the second shift, Patricia interrupted, her tone gentler than before. Go be with your daughter. Your daughter. The words settled into Alara's chest, foreign and frightening, and somehow exactly right. When they were finally allowed into recovery, Alara wasn't prepared for what she saw. Mia looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, surrounded by monitors and IV lines, a breathing tube still in place, chest wrapped in bandages. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, dark lashes stark against her cheeks. Caleb moved to one side of the bed, taking his daughter's small hand with infinite gentleness. Alara took the other side, feeling awkward and useless until she remembered Dr. Chen saying, unconscious patients could often hear familiar voices. Hey, Butterfly, Caleb whispered, voice breaking. You did so good, so brave. The doctors fixed everything, just like we promised. Your heart is going to work perfectly now. Alara reached out tentatively, smoothing hair back from Mia's forehead the way she'd seen Caleb do a dozen times. We're both here, sweetheart, your dad and me, and we're not going anywhere. You just rest and heal, and when you wake up, we'll be right here waiting. The hours in recovery blurred together. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting medications, offering quiet encouragement. Caleb's parents took their turn while Caleb and Alara grabbed food neither wanted and tried to process the surreal reality that the worst seemed to be over. Thank you for staying, Caleb said over untouched sandwiches in the hospital cafeteria, for choosing her over the meeting. I didn't do it for gratitude. I know, that's what makes it matter. They returned to recovery as the sedation began to lighten. Mia started stirring, small movements at first, then increasing restlessness as consciousness returned. A nurse removed the breathing tube, and Mia's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. Daddy? Her voice was a rasp. Right here, Butterfly, I'm right here. Caleb leaned close, voice thick with emotion. You're okay. The surgery's done and you're going to be fine. Mia's gaze wandered, searching, until it landed on Alara. You stayed. Of course I stayed. I promised, didn't I? Important meeting. Mia's words were slurred with medication. Not as important as you. Alara took her hand carefully, mindful of the IV. Nothing is as important as you. Mia's smile was weak but genuine. Love you. The words hit Alara like a physical force. Before she could overthink it, before fear or contracts or careful boundaries could stop her, she heard herself respond. I love you too, sweetheart. Across the bed, Caleb's head snapped up, shock clear in his expression. But Alara couldn't look at him, couldn't examine what she'd just admitted. She just held Mia's hand while the little girl drifted back into healing sleep and tried to process the terrifying reality that somewhere along the way, she'd stopped performing and started actually living this impossible arrangement. Over the next 24 hours, Mia's recovery progressed better than anyone had dared hope. By Saturday afternoon, she was alert enough to complain about hospital food and ask when she could go home. Dr. Chen was thrilled with her vital signs, the repaired heart valves functioning perfectly, her color already improving from the increased oxygen flow. Caleb barely left her side, sleeping in the chair by her bed, waking at every sound. Alara split time between the hospital and necessary phone calls, managing the fallout from missing Monday's board meeting while trying not to think about what it meant that she'd told a 5-year-old she loved her. Margaret called Sunday evening with an update. The meeting was brutal. Marcus presented a whole case about your unreliability, used your sudden marriage and absence as evidence. But I countered with the Castellano merger numbers and reminded them that even CEOs are allowed to have family emergencies. The vote was close, but you're still CEO for now. For now isn't exactly reassuring. It's better than the alternative. But Alara, you need to be visible this week. Attend meetings, make appearances, remind everyone why you're indispensable. No more absences, or they'll use it against you. After hanging up, Alara stood in the hospital corridor feeling the walls closing in. She'd bought herself time, but not security. One more absence, one more prioritization of family over business, and Marcus would have the ammunition he needed to take her down. She returned to Mia's room to find Caleb reading her a story, the little girl propped up on pillows, looking remarkably better despite the chest drainage tubes and monitoring equipment. When she saw Alara, her face lit up. Look, I can sit up by myself. That's wonderful. You're healing so fast. Alara settled into the chair beside the bed, noting how natural this felt now, how easily she'd slipped into this role. After Mia drifted off again, Caleb turned to her. I heard you on the phone. Your job is still in trouble. It's manageable. I just need to be strategic this week. And what happens when strategy requires choosing between boardrooms and being here? Then I'll make whatever choice seems right in that moment. That's not like you. The Alara I met 2 weeks ago would have had everything calculated, every contingency planned. The Alara you met 2 weeks ago didn't have people depending on her presence, not just her performance. She looked at the sleeping child, then at Caleb. I'm learning, maybe too slowly, maybe imperfectly, but I'm trying to figure out how to be someone who can handle both worlds. What if you can't? What if you have to choose? It was the question she'd been avoiding, because the honest answer was terrifying. She didn't know which world she'd choose anymore. The certainty she'd always carried about her priorities had become decidedly uncertain. I don't know, she admitted quietly, and that scares me more than I can explain. Caleb studied her for a long moment. You told Mia you loved her. I know. Did you mean it? Alara wanted to deflect, to hide behind contract language and careful boundaries. Instead, she found herself speaking truth. Yes. I didn't plan to. It wasn't strategic or calculated. But when she said it first, I couldn't say anything else because it was true. That's going to complicate things. When the year ends and we divorce. I know. She's already attached to you. This is just going to make it harder. I know that too. So what do we do? Alara looked at him helplessly. I have absolutely no idea. They sat with that admission hanging between them, the question neither could answer while Mia slept peacefully, her small chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of a repaired heart. The monitoring equipment beeped softly, marking time in a room where 3 people had accidentally become something that looked dangerously close to a real family. The week that followed tested every boundary they'd established. Mia was discharged Thursday with strict instructions for rest and recovery. Alara converted her home office into a temporary bedroom, so Mia wouldn't have to navigate stairs, filled it with books and quiet activities, and found herself working from the dining room table so she could be nearby if needed. Caleb handled the medical care with practiced efficiency, medications on schedule, wound dressing changes, physical therapy exercises. while Ilara managed the logistics of running a company remotely and fielding increasingly hostile calls from board members who saw her absence as proof of Marcus's claims. "You need to come to the office," her father demanded during one particularly tense call. "Your CFO can't keep covering for you. People are starting to talk." "Let them talk. I'll be back Monday for the merger finalization with Castellano. Until then, my stepdaughter needs care and I'm providing it." "Your stepdaughter?" Richard's tone dripped skepticism. "You've known this child for 2 weeks and suddenly she's more important than the company you've spent 15 years building?" "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. "She is." The silence on the other end was stunned. Finally, "I don't know who you are anymore." "Neither do I, Father, but I'm starting to think that's a good thing." She hung up before he could respond, hands shaking with adrenaline and something that felt uncomfortably like liberation. When she turned around, Caleb was standing in the doorway, having obviously heard the entire conversation. That was either very brave or very reckless. Probably both. Ilara set down her phone. "How's Mia?" "Napping. Dr. Chen called with the latest test results. Everything looks perfect. She said Mia's recovery is exceeding expectations." He moved into the room, studying Ilara with that penetrating gaze she'd come to recognize. "You're sacrificing everything for this. For us. Why?" "Because somewhere between the contract signing and right now, it stopped being a sacrifice and started being a choice I wanted to make." "But your career—" "Will survive or it won't. Either way, I'll figure it out." She smiled tiredly. "Turns out I'm more adaptable than I thought. Who knew?" "The board won't forgive you for putting family first." "Then they're not a board worth serving." The words felt radical coming from someone who'd spent her entire adult life prioritizing corporate approval. "I used to think success was about power and position. Now I'm starting to wonder if maybe it's about being able to look at yourself in the mirror and actually like who you see." Caleb crossed to where she sat, surprising her by taking both her hands. "I need to say something, and I need you to hear it completely before you respond." Ilara's heart kicked against her ribs. "Okay." "When Emily died, I thought that was it for me. One great love in a lifetime, and mine was over at 30. I was going to raise Mia, work in the shop, and just exist until existing got easier." His voice was rough with emotion. "Then you showed up with your insane proposal and your contract and your absolute certainty that everything could be reduced to terms and conditions, and I thought you were the most emotionally damaged person I'd ever met." "That's fair. I'm not done." His grip tightened. "But then I watched you with Mia, watched you fumble through bedtime routines and attempt to cook breakfast and sit in that hospital room holding her hand like it was the most important thing you'd ever do. And I realized you weren't emotionally damaged. You were just terrified of connection, of vulnerability, of all the things that make us human and can hurt us most." Ilara couldn't look away, couldn't deflect. "Where are you going with this?" "I'm saying that this arrangement we made, this contract marriage, it's not working anymore. Because somewhere along the way I stopped pretending and started actually falling for you. And I need to know if I'm alone in that or if you feel it too." The confession hung in the air between them, terrifying and inevitable. Ilara's first instinct was to retreat, to hide behind the safety of their original agreement. But looking at Caleb's face, seeing the raw hope and fear mixed together, she couldn't lie. "You're not alone." The admission came out barely above a whisper. "I'm falling too, and it scares me more than anything I've ever done, because I don't know how to do this. How to be someone's partner without contracts defining everything. How to love without guarantees. Nobody has guarantees, that's what makes it brave." "I'm not brave. I'm a coward who hides behind spreadsheets and legal language because real emotion is messy and unpredictable." And Caleb kissed her. It wasn't like their courthouse kiss, mechanical and empty. This was real, hesitant at first, then deepening as Ilara melted into it, her hands coming up to frame his face while his arms wrapped around her waist. It felt like coming home to a place she'd never known existed, like finding something she hadn't realized she'd been searching for. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. "So what do we do now? The contract expires in 11 months. Do we just pretend we haven't completely destroyed the professional boundaries we established? We could rewrite the contract?" "I don't want another contract. I want a real relationship, messy and complicated and without terms and conditions. I don't know how to do that. Then we'll figure it out together. Make mistakes, fight about things, learn as we go, like actual married people instead of business associates playing house. A small voice interrupted from the doorway. Are you kissing? They sprang apart to find Mia standing there in her pajamas, clutching Mr. Hoppy, eyes wide with delight. Sweetheart, you're supposed to be sleeping, Caleb said, flustered. I heard talking, and then kissing sounds. Mia moved closer, studying them with a child's brutal honesty. Does this mean you really love each other, not just pretend? Alara and Caleb exchanged glances. They'd promised never to lie to Mia about important things, which meant navigating this conversation with care. What do you think love looks like? Alara asked gently. Mia considered seriously. When people take care of each other even when it's hard, when they stay even when they could leave, when they choose to be together. She looked between them. Like how you stayed with me at the hospital instead of going to your important meeting, and how Daddy married you so I could get fixed. That's love, right? Out of the mouths of children, Alara thought. You're exactly right. That's what love is. So you do love each other for real? Caleb pulled his daughter close. We do. It wasn't part of the original plan, but yes, we really do. Good. Mia snuggled against him. Because I love both of you and I don't want anyone to leave. Nobody's leaving, Alara said firmly, then caught herself. At least, I'm not. If your dad wants me to stay. Always, Caleb said quietly. Stay always. The Monday morning merger meeting arrived too quickly. Alara dressed in her armor, a Tom Ford power suit, Louboutin heels, hair in a severe chignon that screamed corporate authority. She looked exactly like the CEO who'd commanded boardrooms for years, even if she felt fundamentally different inside. Caleb appeared in the doorway of their bedroom now, the distinction made official 3 nights ago when he'd simply refused to sleep at the other end of the penthouse anymore. You look terrifying, in a good way. I need to be terrifying today. Marcus is going to push for my removal. The board is looking for any excuse to vote me out. This merger is my last chance to prove I'm still the right person to lead. And if they vote you out anyway, then I'll figure out what comes next, but I'm not going down without a fight. He crossed to her, straightening her collar with gentle fingers. For what it's worth, I think you're the most capable person I've ever met. Whatever happens today, that doesn't change. I love you. The word still felt foreign, risky, but increasingly necessary. I need you to know that before I walk into that room. I love you too. Now go show them why they'd be idiots to let you go. The Vaughn Industries boardroom looked exactly as it had 3 weeks ago when this entire situation began, except now Alara saw it differently. The power dynamics, the posturing, the careful political maneuvering, it all seemed exhausting and small compared to Mia's recovery or Caleb's quiet strength or the real life she'd built outside these walls. The board members filed in, faces ranging from sympathetic to openly hostile. Marcus Grayson arrived last, confidence radiating from every pore. He thought he'd won already. Richard Vaughn called the meeting to order. We're here to finalize the Castellano merger and address concerns about leadership stability. Marcus, you called this meeting. You have the floor. Marcus stood, smooth and practiced. Thank you. I'll be direct. Over the past month, our CEO has demonstrated repeated unreliability. She disappeared for days without adequate explanation, married a stranger in what appears to be a desperate attempt to satisfy merger requirements, and then missed a critical board meeting to attend to personal matters. This is not the behavior of someone capable of leading a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Several board members nodded. Alara kept her expression neutral. Furthermore, Marcus continued, I've spoken with Castellanos' team. They have concerns about Ms. Vaughn's sudden lifestyle changes and whether she's truly committed to the partnership they're entering. They're requesting assurances that won't be coming from someone whose personal life is in chaos. My personal life is not in chaos, Alara said calmly. My stepdaughter had emergency heart surgery. I prioritized her recovery over a meeting that could be rescheduled. That's called having appropriate values, not unreliability. Convenient how this stepdaughter appeared exactly when you needed to present as married and stable. The implication was clear. Alara felt anger flash through her, but kept her voice level. Are you suggesting I orchestrated a child's medical crisis for professional benefit? Because that's both insulting and absurd. I'm suggesting that your entire marriage is a sham designed to satisfy merger requirements, and the board has a right to know if our CEO is operating with integrity or just convenient fictions. The room went silent. Alara could feel everyone waiting for her response, knowing that whatever she said next would determine everything. She stood slowly, meeting Marcus's gaze with steel. You want to know if my marriage is real? Fine. Here's the truth. 3 weeks ago, I made a business arrangement with Caleb Reed. He needed money for his daughter's surgery. I needed a husband to satisfy outdated expectations. We signed contracts, making it a clean transaction with a clear end date. Gasps around the table. Marcus's smile was triumphant. But here's what you don't understand, Alara continued, voice growing stronger. That contract became irrelevant about 2 weeks ago when I realized I'd accidentally fallen in love with a carpenter who builds furniture meant to last, and a 5-year-old who asks questions I can't answer and makes me want to be a better person than the one sitting in this boardroom. Richard's face had gone pale. Alara, what are you doing? I'm telling the truth. Something I should have done from the beginning. She turned to address the full board. You wanted me married to prove stability? I got married. You wanted evidence I could balance personal and professional life? I'm learning, imperfectly, to do exactly that. And yes, I missed a meeting because my daughter, and she is my daughter now, contract or not, needed me more than you did in that moment. This is completely inappropriate, Marcus interjected. You're admitting to fraud. I'm admitting to being human, to making choices that served multiple purposes, to learning that maybe the things you all demanded, family, connection, life outside this building, maybe those things actually do make someone a better leader, not a worse one. She leaned forward, hands on the table. So here's my position. I will finalize the Castellano merger because it's good for this company. I will continue to lead with the same strategic brilliance I've demonstrated for 15 years. But I will also continue to prioritize my family when they need me, because leaders who only understand business and not humanity are incomplete. The board will never accept that, Marcus said smugly. Then you'll have my resignation. The words came out steady despite the fear beneath them. Because I've spent my entire adult life building this company at the expense of everything else, and I'm not doing that anymore. If you can't accept a CEO who's also a wife and mother, then find someone else. I'll survive. The room erupted in arguments. Some board members looked appalled, others thoughtful. Margaret Chen was smiling despite obvious attempts to hide it. Richard looked like he'd aged a decade. Antonio Castellano's voice cut through the chaos via speakerphone. May I speak? Everyone fell silent. They'd forgotten he was on the call. I have been listening to this entire meeting, Antonio said, accent thick. And I have something to say. When I first heard about Alara's sudden marriage, I was suspicious. It seemed, how you say, convenient. But then I meet this husband and child, and I see something real. Complicated? Yes. Messy? Yes. But real. Mr. Castellano, Marcus attempted, surely you can see. What I see is a woman who stopped pretending to be perfect and started being honest. This is leadership. Not the kind that looks good on paper, but the kind that inspires loyalty because it comes from truth. He paused. My merger stands, with Alara Vaughn as CEO. If you remove her, I remove my partnership. Is that clear? The silence was absolute. Furthermore, Antonio continued, I'm ashamed that this board created circumstances where a woman had to choose between career and family. In my companies, we support both. Perhaps Vaughn Industries should learn to do the same. After he disconnected, the board sat in stunned silence. Finally, Richard spoke. We'll table the leadership discussion. Let's focus on finalizing the merger terms. Marcus looked murderous, but couldn't argue against Castellano's direct support. The rest of the meeting proceeded with tense efficiency, merger papers signed, terms agreed upon. The deal that had started this entire situation finally completed. When it was over, board members filed out quickly, avoiding eye contact. Only Margaret remained. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or professional suicide. Possibly both. Alara gathered her papers with shaking hands. But I meant every word. I know. That's what made it powerful. Margaret smiled. For what it's worth, I think you just became a much better CEO, even if half the board wants your head. They'll get over it or they won't. Either way, I'm done living my life according to their expectations. When Alara finally made it home that evening, exhausted and emotionally wrung out, she found Caleb and Mia in the kitchen attempting to make dinner. Pasta sauce covered multiple surfaces, Mia was wearing more flour than the cutting board held, and Caleb looked hilariously overwhelmed. "We're making spaghetti," Mia announced proudly. "Daddy says you had a big important day and need comfort food." Alara set down her briefcase, kicked off her heels, and surveyed the disaster zone that was her previously pristine kitchen. 6 weeks ago, this would have stressed her beyond measure. Now she just laughed. "It looks perfect. What can I do to help?" Over dinner, she told them edited versions of the day's events. The confrontation, Castellano's support, the tentative victory that still felt precarious. Mia listened with wide eyes, understanding perhaps 10% but sensing the importance. "So you told everyone the truth?" Mia asked. "Even though it was scary?" "Even though it was terrifying." "And they didn't fire you?" "Not yet, though some of them probably want to." Mia considered this seriously. "Mama used to say that telling the truth is braver than telling lies, even when the truth is hard. I think you were very brave today." Alara felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means a lot." After Mia was in bed, Caleb found Alara on the balcony overlooking the city, processing the day in the cold November air. "You really did it," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Chose honesty over strategy." "I'm not sure it was a choice. It just felt like the only option that wouldn't make me hate myself." "Your father called me this afternoon." Alara tensed. "What did he want?" "To tell me I'd corrupted his daughter, turned her soft, destroyed her focus." Caleb's voice carried amusement. "I told him he'd raised a brilliant woman who was finally learning to be a complete person instead of just a corporate machine. He hung up on me. He'll come around eventually, or he won't. I'm learning to be okay with either outcome." "What happens now, with the board, with Marcus, with everything?" Alara turned in his arms, looking up at him in the city lights. "I genuinely don't know. Marcus will keep pushing for my removal. Some board members will support him. I'll fight to keep my position, but I might lose. The merger is done, so at least that's secured, but my CEO role is still uncertain." "And if you lose it?" "Then I figure out what comes next. Maybe I start my own firm. Maybe I take time to actually be present with you and Mia. Maybe I discover there's life outside boardrooms." She smiled. The old me would have had this all planned out with contingencies and backup strategies. The new me is learning to be okay with uncertainty. "I'm proud of you, in case I haven't said that enough. I couldn't have done any of this without you, either of you." She paused, gathering courage. "I know our contract expires in 11 months, but I was thinking maybe we should tear it up entirely." Caleb pulled back slightly. "What?" "The contract. It's meaningless now. We're not pretending anymore. This is real. The marriage, the family, all of it. So why keep pretending there's an expiration date?" "You want to stay married? For real, no end date, actual till death do us part marriage. I want to build something lasting, like your furniture, made to endure, not designed for temporary convenience." She reached up to cup his face. "I want to choose you every day. Not because a contract says I have to, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it." "That's the most romantic thing you've ever said," which is slightly terrifying coming from someone who proposed marriage as a business transaction. "I'm learning. Give me credit for growth." He kissed her then, and it felt like a promise of complicated tomorrows and messy domesticity and building something real from the fragments of what had started as fiction. The following week settled into a new rhythm. Alara continued as CEO, but restructured her schedule to include family dinners and bedtime routines and weekends in Millbrook, where Mia could see friends and Caleb could work in his shop. The board grumbled, but couldn't argue with results, as the Castellano merger proved immediately profitable. Mia healed beautifully, her color returning, her energy boundless now that her heart worked properly. She started kindergarten in Manhattan, but spent weekends in Millbrook, bridging both worlds with the adaptability of children. 3 months after the surgery, on a snowy Saturday in Millbrook, Caleb took Alara to his workshop. I made you something. In the center of the space sat a dining table, massive and gorgeous, clearly the product of hundreds of hours of work. The wood was warm walnut, the design both elegant and sturdy, every joint perfectly crafted. It's beautiful, Ilara breathed, running her hands over the smooth surface. It's for our family. All of us, you, me, Mia, my parents when they visit, your father if he ever stops being angry, whoever else becomes part of our story. He moved beside her. I started it the week after Mia's surgery, needed something to do with my hands while processing everything that was changing. Caleb, I don't have words. You don't need words. Just show up to dinner and let this table become the center of whatever we're building together. That evening, they christened the table with takeout pizza and Mia's endless chatter about her day. It was imperfect and chaotic, and nothing like the elegant dinner parties Ilara had hosted in her previous life. It was also the happiest she'd ever been. 6 months after the surgery, Richard Vaughn finally accepted an invitation to dinner. He arrived at the Millbrook house with obvious discomfort, clearly out of place in the small-town setting. But watching Ilara with Mia, helping with homework, laughing at knock-knock jokes, completely unself-conscious in her joy, something in his expression softened. "You seem different," he said over coffee while Mia and Caleb were in the other room. "I am different. Better, I think." "I'm not sure I agree. You were formidable before. Now you're human, connected, actually happy instead of just successful." Richard was quiet for a moment. "Your mother and I married for practical reasons, built a partnership that worked professionally, but we never had what you have with him." He nodded toward where Caleb was entertaining Mia. "I thought we were doing it right, that love was a luxury successful people didn't need. Maybe I was wrong." "You weren't wrong for your life, but you were wrong trying to make me live the same way." Ilara reached across to touch his hand. "I'm still successful, Father. I'm just also learning to be more than that. The board is settling down. Marcus made another push last month, but Castellano threatened to pull out again. You've got probably another year of security, maybe more if the merger keeps performing. And after that? After that, you'll handle whatever comes, because that's what you do." He smiled slightly. "Even if you do it differently now." The 1-year mark of Mia's surgery arrived on a Friday in late spring. Dr. Chen's evaluation was glowing. Perfect heart function, no complications, full clearance for normal activities. They celebrated with the promised kitten, a tiny orange tabby that Mia named Butterscotch. That night, after Mia was asleep with Butterscotch curled beside her, Caleb pulled out the original contract they'd signed. "Should we do something ceremonial, burn it, shred it? Or we could keep it," Ilara suggested, "as a reminder of where we started." "That's surprisingly sentimental." "I'm learning to appreciate sentiment, along with chaos, uncertainty, and unconditional love." She took the contract, paging through clauses that seemed to belong to different people in a different lifetime. "This document brought us together, even if everything it specified turned out to be wrong." "Not everything. The part about Mia's surgery was right, and the part about giving each other what we needed, we did that, just not the way we expected." "No, not at all the way we expected." They filed the contract away in a drawer, choosing instead to live their marriage without terms and conditions, building their family on trust instead of legal language. 2 years after the surgery on Mia's 8th birthday, Ilara stood in their Millbrook backyard watching her daughter. And she was her daughter in every way that mattered, run through a butterfly garden they'd planted together. Caleb's parents were there. Her father had even made the trip, and neighborhood kids filled the space with joyful chaos. "You look content," Margaret observed, having driven up for the party. "It's unsettling seeing you actually relaxed. I'm learning the art of being present. Still not perfect at it, but improving. And work? Work is work. I'm still CEO, still fighting Marcus's attempts to undermine me, still proving that you can lead a company and have a life. Some days are easier than others. But you wouldn't go back to the way things were before?" Ilara watched Caleb lift Mia onto his shoulders so she could reach a butterfly on a high branch, listened to her daughter's delighted laughter, felt the completeness of this imperfect, complicated, utterly real life they'd built. Not for anything in the world. That evening, after guests had left and Mia was exhausted from excitement, the three of them sat on the porch swing watching fireflies emerge in the dusk. Mia was tucked between her parents, her head on Ilara's shoulder, her legs across Caleb's lap. "Best birthday ever," she murmured sleepily. "What made it the best?" Alara asked. "Everyone I love was here, together, like a real family." Caleb met Alara's eyes over their daughter's head, and the look they shared needed no words. This was their real family, messy and unexpected and built on a foundation of contracts that had transformed into something infinitely stronger. "We are a real family," Alara said softly. "The realest family I've ever known. Even though we started fake, especially because of that. We chose each other. Keep choosing each other. That's more real than anything." Later, after Mia was in bed, Caleb found Alara in the workshop where she'd taken to joining him some evenings, learning the basics of woodworking, finding peace in creating something tangible. "I have something for you." He pulled out a small wooden box, beautifully crafted, and opened it to reveal 2 new rings, not the simple gold bands from their courthouse wedding, but intricate designs carved with butterfly motifs. "Caleb, they're stunning. I made them over the past few months, been planning this for a while." He took her left hand, sliding off the original ring and replacing it with the new one. "Alara Vaughn Reed, will you marry me? Again? For real this time, with real vows and real promises and absolutely no contracts involved?" Tears blurred her vision. "We're already married." "We're legally married. I'm asking you to choose it again. Choose us. Not because of business requirements or surgical funding or any practical reason. Just because you love me and want to build a life together." "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. "Yes, I'll marry you again. As many times as you want." They planned a simple ceremony in the backyard garden 6 months later, surrounded by everyone who mattered. Mia was flower girl, practically vibrating with excitement. Patricia cried through the entire ceremony. Even Richard admitted it was beautiful, though he maintained that outdoor weddings were impractical. When the minister asked if they took each other as husband and wife, both answered with voices clear and strong, meaning every word this time. The kiss was neither brief nor performative, but full of promise and joy, and the recognition that they'd found something rare. Love that had survived being built on lies and emerged stronger for the truth. At the reception, Antonio Castellano pulled Alara aside. "You know, when we first did business, I thought you were all calculation, no heart. I am very happy to be wrong." "I'm happy you were wrong too, though I think you saw the potential before I did. I saw someone running from themselves. Now I see someone who has stopped running and started living. This is success, real success." During the father-daughter dance, tradition dictated by Mia, who'd seen it in movies, she looked up at Caleb with serious eyes. "Daddy, are you happy?" "Happier than I ever thought I'd be again, Butterfly." "Me too. I know I'm supposed to miss Mama, and I do, but I also love Alara. Is that okay?" Caleb's eyes filled with tears. "That's more than okay. Love doesn't run out. You can love them both. Mama would want you to be happy." "I think she'd like Alara. They're both brave and smart, and they both love us." "I think you're right." When Alara danced with her father, he held her at formal distance, still uncomfortable with displays of emotion, but his words were softer than she'd ever heard them. "I owe you an apology for pushing you into that impossible position with the marriage requirement, for prioritizing business over your well-being, for never teaching you that there was value in anything beyond achievement. You taught me plenty of valuable things: drive, strategy, resilience. I just had to learn the other parts on my own. You learned them well. You've built something here that I never managed, a real partnership. I'm proud of you, not for the company's success, though that's impressive, but for this, for finding happiness." It was the most emotional conversation they'd ever had. Alara hugged him, feeling the stiffness in his body slowly relax into acceptance. 5 years after the original contract, Alara stepped down as CEO of Vaughn Industries. Not because she was forced out, but because she chose to step back and launch her own consulting firm, specializing in helping companies develop better work-life integration policies. She built it from her Millbrook office, working 3 days a week and spending the rest of her time actually living. Mia flourished, showing artistic talent that Emily would have loved and business acumen that made Alara beam with pride. She split her time between Manhattan culture and Millbrook community, belonging fully to both worlds. Caleb expanded his workshop, taking on apprentices and teaching the craft he loved, while still making time for family dinners and homework help and the thousand small moments that comprised real partnership. On their 7th wedding anniversary, counting from the courthouse ceremony because Mia insisted that was the official date, they returned to that same courthouse with their daughter. "Why are we here?" Mia asked. "Because this is where your dad and I got married the first time," Ilara explained. "And I wanted you to see it, to understand that sometimes the best things in life start in unexpected ways." "You mean because you made a deal?" "Because we made a deal that turned into something better than either of us planned." Mia studied the building thoughtfully. "So it's like when you plant seeds and you think you're growing tomatoes, but you actually get butterflies instead?" Caleb laughed. "That's not how gardening works, butterfly." "But it's how love works," Ilara said. "You think you know what you're planting, and then something completely different and wonderful grows instead." They took a photo on the courthouse steps, the three of them together, Mia between her parents, all of them smiling like they'd won something precious. Because they had. That night, reading Mia her bedtime story, Ilara paused at a passage about choosing love over logic, courage over calculation. Mia was already half asleep, but she murmured something that made Ilara's heart clench. "I'm glad you chose us, even when it was hard." "Me too, sweetheart. Best choice I ever made." After Mia was asleep, Ilara joined Caleb on their porch, the same spot where they'd sat countless evenings, building their life conversation by conversation. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "The way we started? The contract and the lies and the complications? I regret that we had to go through it that way, but I don't regret where it brought us." He pulled her closer. "What about you? Ever wish you'd found a simpler way to save your career?" "Every other option would have been simpler. This was the only one that gave me everything I didn't know I needed." She looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "I spent my whole life thinking happiness was about power and success. Turns out it was about finding two people who made me want to be present instead of always chasing the next achievement." That's very philosophical for someone who used to communicate primarily in contract clauses. I've had good teachers, a carpenter who showed me that building something lasting requires patience and care, and a little girl who reminded me that the best things in life can't be negotiated. They have to be chosen, every single day. "Speaking of choosing," Caleb said casually, "how would you feel about expanding our family?" Ilara's heart kicked. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" "Mia's been asking about siblings, and I've been thinking about how much I love being a father, how good you are with kids despite claiming otherwise. So yes, I'm asking if you'd want to have a baby. Together." The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "I'm 40 years old. I've never even considered—" "I know, which is why I'm asking, not assuming. This is completely your choice." Ilara thought about it, about morning sickness and diapers and all the chaos a baby would bring. Thought about how her career would be impacted, how her carefully balanced life would explode into glorious mess. Thought about holding a child that was part her and part Caleb, watching Mia become a big sister, building their family even larger and more complicated. "Let's try," she said. "Let's choose to expand this messy, imperfect, absolutely perfect family we've built." His smile could have lit the darkness. "Yeah?" "Yeah. Though I reserve the right to panic about it extensively. Wouldn't expect anything less." 18 months later, on a snowy February morning, Ilara gave birth to a son they named Benjamin Thomas Reed. Mia was 9 years old and took her role as big sister with fierce dedication. Caleb cried through the entire delivery, and Ilara discovered that all her careful planning and strategic thinking couldn't prepare her for the overwhelming love she felt holding her newborn son. The business world was scandalized when Ilara took 4 months of maternity leave. Her consulting firm survived without her. The world kept turning, and she learned that stepping back didn't mean disappearing. It meant trusting others and prioritizing what actually mattered. When Benjamin was 6 months old, she returned to work part-time, building a career that fit her life instead of a life that fit her career. Some former colleagues thought she'd lost her edge. She thought she'd finally found her balance. 10 years after the original contract, Ilara and Caleb sat in their Millbrook living room while teenage Mia practiced piano and 10-year-old Benjamin built intricate structures from blocks, showing his father's engineering mind and his mother's strategic planning. "Do you think they'll understand someday?" Ilara asked quietly. About how we started? We'll tell them when they're old enough. Let them know that sometimes the most important things begin in unexpected ways. That choosing love over logic isn't weakness, it's the bravest thing you can do. And that contracts make terrible foundations for marriages, but excellent starting points for stories about how two terrified people accidentally built something beautiful. Ilara leaned against him, watching their children, feeling the weight of the life they'd created. I love you. I know I say it all the time now, but I never get tired of it. I love you too, and I'm grateful every day that you walked into my workshop with your impossible proposal. Best business deal I ever made. Worst business deal. Best life decision. Mia looked up from her piano. Are you two being mushy again? Because it's kind of embarrassing. Get used to it, Caleb called back. We're going to be mushy for at least another 50 years. Ugh, I'm telling my friends my parents are gross. Tell them we're grossly in love, Ilara suggested. There's a difference. After the kids were in bed, Ilara pulled out the original contract one final time. She'd kept it all these years, a reminder of who she'd been and how far she'd come. Should we finally get rid of this? Caleb asked. Actually, I was thinking we should frame it, hang it in my office. A reminder that the best things in life often start with the worst ideas, and courage isn't about having a perfect plan. It's about being willing to adapt when reality turns out better than anything you could have strategized. That's very evolved of you. I've had a good decade of practice at being human instead of being perfect. She smiled. Turns out I prefer it this way. They framed the contract the next week, hanging it beside family photos and children's artwork and all the evidence of their beautifully imperfect life. Visitors who saw it and asked about it got varying answers depending on who was telling the story. Caleb's version, it's how we met. Unconventional start to something that became the most conventional kind of happy ending. Ilara's version, it's proof that sometimes you have to completely destroy your carefully planned life to discover what you actually needed all along. Mia's version, when she was old enough to understand, it's my parents being weird and sentimental, but kind of sweet, I guess. Benjamin's version, it's just some old paper, but it makes Mom smile, so it must be important. 20 years after the original contract, Ilara stood at Mia's college graduation, watching her daughter accept honors in both art and business, somehow managing to blend both parents' strengths into her own unique path. Benjamin was 13 and showing early signs of his own brilliance, though in environmental science rather than business or carpentry. That night, lying in bed in their Manhattan apartment, they'd kept the penthouse but renovated it to feel like a home rather than a museum. Caleb traced patterns on her shoulder. You know what's funny? That contract specified 1 year. We're at 20. Turns out I'm terrible at following contract terms. Best failure I've ever witnessed. Ilara rolled to face him, seeing the gray in his hair, the lines around his eyes, all the evidence of years lived fully. If you could go back, knowing everything that would happen, would you still sign it? Without hesitation, you? I'd sign it faster. Skip the parts where I tried to keep it strictly business and just admit from the beginning that I was terrified of wanting something real. You weren't ready to admit that then. No, I had to learn, through mistakes and fear and slowly discovering that love isn't about control, it's about trust. Very wise. Marriage has been good for you. Terrible for my corporate reputation. Excellent for my actual life. She kissed him softly. Thank you for being patient while I figured that out. Thank you for choosing me, choosing us, every day for 20 years. Easiest choice I ever made, once I got past the terror. On their 25th anniversary, they renewed their vows again, this time with adult children standing beside them. Mia married with a child of her own, Benjamin bringing his partner of 2 years. 3 generations gathered to celebrate a marriage that had started as fiction and became the truest thing any of them knew. Standing under an arbor in their Millbrook garden, Ilara spoke vows she'd written herself. 25 years ago, I thought I was negotiating a business arrangement. I thought I could control the outcome, manage the variables, keep everything safely contained in legal language. I was spectacularly wrong. What I actually did was take the biggest risk of my life. I let myself be vulnerable with someone who saw through every defense I'd built. Caleb, you taught me that the best things in life can't be contracted or controlled. They can only be chosen, every single day. And I choose you. Today, tomorrow, and for whatever time we have left. Not because I have to, because I can't imagine doing anything else. Caleb's vows were simpler, but no less powerful. Elara, you walked into my workshop 25 years ago and offered me the strangest proposal I'd ever heard. I said yes because I was desperate. I stayed because I fell in love. And I keep staying because every day with you is better than I imagined possible. You turned out to be nothing like I expected and everything I needed. Here's to 25 more years of you surprising me. At the reception, their granddaughter, Mia's daughter Grace, asked the question children always asked. Grandma, how did you and Grandpa meet? Elara looked at Caleb, at their children, at the life they'd built from impossible beginnings. We made a deal, a very unusual business arrangement that turned into the greatest love story I could have never planned. What kind of deal? The kind that taught me the most important things in life aren't the ones you can negotiate. They're the ones you have to be brave enough to feel. Grace considered this with 5-year-old seriousness. That doesn't make sense. It will someday. When you're old enough to understand that the best things often start in ways that don't make sense at all. As the sun set over their garden, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Elara stood with Caleb's arms around her, surrounded by the family they'd built and the life they'd created. The contract that started it all hung framed in her office, a reminder of the woman she'd been. Brilliant but incomplete, powerful but lonely, successful but profoundly unhappy. That woman had made a desperate choice 25 years ago, thinking she was solving a business problem. She'd accidentally solved her life instead. What are you thinking? Caleb murmured against her ear. That I spent 32 years trying to control everything, and the moment I lost control was the moment I found everything that mattered. Any regrets? Only that I didn't find you sooner. We found each other exactly when we needed to. Elara turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd transformed her entire understanding of what it meant to be alive. You know what the best part is? What's that? I don't need a contract anymore to know you'll stay. I don't need guarantees or terms and conditions or exit strategies. I just need this, us, choosing each other, building something that lasts because we want it to, not because any agreement says we have to. That's love, Elara. Real, messy, imperfect, unconditional love. Took me long enough to figure that out. But you did figure it out. That's what matters. They danced until the stars came out, surrounded by everyone who'd witnessed their unlikely journey from contract to commitment, from transaction to transformation. And if anyone had told that terrified CEO standing in a carpenter's workshop 25 years ago that she'd end up here, blissfully married, mother and grandmother, having chosen people over power and finding she'd lost nothing that mattered, she never would have believed them. But she would have been so grateful to be proven wrong. Because sometimes the best love stories don't start with love at all. Sometimes they start with desperation and contracts and two people who think they're solving a problem. Sometimes you have to build something fake before you can create something real. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is sign your name to an impossible agreement and then have the courage to rewrite every single term. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you find that the person you married for all the wrong reasons turns out to be exactly the right person to spend your life loving. Elara had everything now. The career she'd rebuilt on her own terms, the family she'd never planned for, the love she'd never believed she deserved. Not because of any contract or strategic planning, but because one night she'd walked into a workshop and a carpenter had looked at her and seen someone running. She'd stopped running, and in stopping, she'd finally found home.